Warrior Lore. Chapter 3107. In other words, these thousands of traces were all the same. They were either traces of the gold core or traces of gold chi. But it was clear that Xiao Hua's true essence, which was condensed from true essence, flowed into these traces. These traces were naturally traces of the gold core. Damn it! Xiao Hua couldn't help but groan. It was already so difficult for him to condense a gold core. Now, a gold core nebula actually appeared in his lower dantian. Not to mention having a nascent soul. Even if he wanted to restore this nebula-shaped gold core to its previous gold core realm, how much effort would it take? Heavens, are you playing with me? Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. Unfortunately, this was only the first abnormality after the gold core was annihilated. Immediately after, Xiao Hua discovered the second abnormality. Because his true essence flowed into his lower dantian, the traces of his gold core didn't change at all. In other words, Xiao Hua could sense his own gold core, but it didn't increase in size like an ordinary gold core. Could it be that there are too many nebula-shaped gold cores? My true essence can't be distributed? These gold cores can't increase in size? Xiao Hua could only suspect like this, but he already had a premonition in his heart. It seemed that the complexity of the matter was far from what his divine sense could see. As for what the real answer was, the current Xiao Hua naturally couldn't explain it. He could only wait until his cultivation gradually recovered in the future, then he could carefully search for it. Thus, Xiao Hua temporarily put his lower dantian aside and sent his divine sense into his middle dantian. Following the breaking of the seal in my middle dantian, this Xiao seems to remember that this Xiao cultivated some carefree heart sutra before. Moreover, I cultivated it to the 18th layer of Qi refining. I'm afraid that day when this Xiao insisted that Qi refining should be at the 18th layer, it was because of this. Before Xiao Hua's divine sense entered his middle dantian, he thought to himself, however, since this middle dantian is also true Qi and also an aura refining cultivation base, I'm afraid that it was also completely wiped out by the 5 elements annihilation great formation, right? As Xiao Hua thought, his middle dantian was empty, somewhat similar to his lower dantian. However, there was no trace of an aurous core. Instead, it was a sword-shaped primordial spirit that flashed with a faint golden light. Around it were 8 swords of different sizes that rotated extremely slowly. Xiao Hua's origin soul that had entered the dream executioner's body looked like a sword, but the golden light around it made it look like a human. However, if one looked closely, they would see that there was a small heart inside the sword. It looked like a beating heart. This surging wave spread out from the sword shape, and through the golden light, it spread to the 8 small swords around it. This small sword also trembled along with the heart-shaped undulations, forming the shape of a heart sword. An indescribable sense of righteousness and sharpness emanated from this sword-shaped primordial spirit. It felt as if it could pierce through the heavens. What a pity for my sword origin! Xiao Hua was a little regretful. He knew in his heart that his ability to transform into a sword was simply too coincidental. There would not be a second sword tomb in this world, and there would not be any more gold qi for him to condense sword essence. If he followed the Huan country's sword cultivation method, he would have to work 100 times harder than before to enter the sword transformation realm. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua's mind suddenly lit up, as if he had thought of something. Almost impatiently, his divine sense left his middle dantian, and he took out a jade slip. Wasn't this the secret technique from Hutu Village's G-Man? After Xiao Hua carefully read it, he closed his eyes and pondered for a long time. A rare smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. This was the first time Xiao Hua smiled from the bottom of his heart after the great change. That's right, it should be like this. At this moment, Xiao Hua was like a pearl of wisdom in his chest. He laughed softly and said, "My middle dantian's 18th layer of qi refining cultivation has been crippled, but the foundation of my true qi is still there. Isn't it precisely because I can transform my true qi into the righteous qi of Confucian cultivators? Moreover, my sword intent is the heart sword. Isn't it the same as the core heart incantation left by Huang Yi? The most wonderful thing is that the core heart incantation is in the inheritance of Confucian cultivators. I also obtained a core heart from a mysterious space. That core heart is the most righteous chi in the world refined by Confucian cultivators. It can be used to display the core heart incantation. Everything really comes naturally and seamlessly. Go, Xiao Hua clapped his hands. The Confucian secret technique, core heart, tortoise shell, and Confucian clothes were all sent into his middle dantian. They fell in front of his heart sword primordial spirit. His entire middle dantian was immediately illuminated by a red light. Everything was scarlet red. An indescribable feeling emerged from Xiao Hua's heart. This feeling was a kind of rebirth, a kind of freedom, a kind of uprightness, a kind of breathing, a kind of lofty sentiments. Hiss, Xiao Hua sucked in a breath of cold air. The cultivation of Taoism was also extremely subtle. When one cultivated to a profound level, it would also make one's ears prick and cheeks scratch with joy. All kinds of strange feelings would come one after another. Similarly, it was also indescribable with words. However, Xiao Hua had never experienced such a grand and unyielding aura like the heart of cinnabar, which pressed forward courageously. It had never appeared even in the sword intent of Huan country's sword cultivators and Xiao Hua's uncondensed core heart. And it just so happened that Xiao Hua was extremely fond of this incomparably upright momentum. It was also in line with his temperament. How could he not be astonished? Confucian cultivator. Mysterious Confucian cultivator. After Xiao Hua's astonishment, he was delighted and sighed. A cultivation path that can stand up to my Taoism. Sure enough, it has its own uniqueness. It's a pity that this righteous path of heaven and earth was actually destroyed by Taoism. It's really a pity. While Xiao Hua was thinking, that Confucian robe landed in his middle dantian. It was precisely on the body of the sword-shaped primordial spirit. A rather refined Xiao Hua stood majestically in his dantian. An indescribable momentum was emitted from within the red light. After settling the sword-shaped primordial spirit in his middle dantian, Xiao Hua's divine sense once again fell into his Niwen palace. When he saw the layer of faint golden seal characters outside his Niwen palace, Xiao Hua was greatly alarmed. An ancient memory immediately poured into his mind. Innate divine restriction? Rabbit talisman? Golden crow talisman? Xiao Hua closed his eyes for a moment. The expression on his face was one of ecstasy and confusion. The extremely powerful capital star formation on Dawn Rain continent is actually only one of the 360 innate divine restrictions on my Niwen palace. Moreover, it's the simplest defensive formation. The other formations, aren't they even more powerful? But how can my Niwen palace have so many powerful innate divine restrictions? And I only need to comprehend more of these divine restrictions. Won't I also be able to attain Tao? Unfortunately, Xiao Hua's primordial spirit could no longer be separated. After thinking for a moment, he truly sent the almost invisible Buddha Saraira into his Niwen palace. Then, he sent the exquisite leaf scripture that was almost completely repaired in the Buddhist sect's ruins into his Niwen palace. Similarly, the exquisite derivation pagoda immediately emitted a Buddhist light as soon as it entered. The entire pagoda began to slowly expand until it was more than 90 zhang tall. Every layer was about 10 zhang tall and emitted a golden radiance from within. Understood. Seeing the exquisite derivation pagoda in such a state, how could Xiao Hua still not understand? This exquisite derivation pagoda isn't purely used to store gold leaf. Its greatest function is to cultivate Buddha Saraira. Sure enough, when the Buddha Saraira entered the exquisite pagoda, the entire first layer of the exquisite pagoda emitted countless golden radiance like a heavenly maiden scattering flowers. That's right. There's also the golden crow eye obtained from the Buddhist sect's ruins. In the Buddhist sect's ruins, Xiao Hua only obtained a few Buddhist artifacts and the golden crow. Now, he naturally had to carefully examine it. Heaven's eye connection? The golden crow that was sent into the exquisite pagoda was also opened. Seeing the golden radiance on the pages, Xiao Hua frowned. What is this? However, when he briefly looked through the contents of the book, he couldn't help but be overjoyed again. He thought to himself, People often say that one who survives a great disaster is bound to have good fortune later on. Today, I escaped from the Buddhist sect's ruins and escaped with my life from the hands of two nascent soul cultivators. As expected, I was extremely lucky. Those with the heaven's eye connection can see the four great colors of the world through their eyes. It is called the heaven's eye. What the heaven's eye sees, from the six paths of the earth to the six paths of the earth, all living beings, whether near or far, covering or fine, all colors can be seen. Isn't it tailor-made for this Xiao? The Dharma eye in this Xiao's left hand seems to be increasingly useless, and I don't know how to cultivate the Dharma eye soul imprint between my eyebrows. In particular, isn't the Emo Zhao corpse from the Emo Zhao Black Forest also useless? The three elders of the Ardent Fire Mountain once had a secret technique that could use the brain matter. The brain matter can also improve one of the five senses of the fleshly body. Isn't this heaven's eye connection suitable for use? It's really a good thing. Soon after, Xiao Hua handed the golden centipede and the secret technique to the Buddha Sarira. The three things Xiao Hua relied on for his cultivation were also heavily damaged by the three layers of formations. One was the nebula gold core of the Tao sect in the lower Dantian. One was the overwhelming elixir core of the Confucian cultivator in the middle Dantian. And one was the Buddha Sarira of the Buddhist sect in the upper Dantian. Now, they were all destroyed and rebuilt. Under Xiao Hua's arrangement, each of the three primordial spirits began the most basic cultivation. Xiao Hua's divine sense once again entered his meridians. That primordial spirit cultivating the dragon transformation art was still as heavy as before. Without the seal on the middle Dantian, a feeling of relief emerged from the primordial spirit. Xiao Hua knew that his meridians were not damaged. He only needed to let his primordial spirit continue cultivating the dragon transformation art. Sooner or later, it would succeed. Xiao Hua's divine sense once again looked at the primordial spirit in his fleshly body. It was still energetically cultivating the immortal body empowerment technique. Only then did he return his divine sense to his bloodline. As early as when he entered the Gue He Sea, Xiao Hua had already given the Blood Drop Paradise's magic slip to the primordial spirit in his bloodline. Later, because of the three layers of formations, Xiao Hua put the blood ring into the space. He looked at his bloodline and found nothing unusual. His mind entered the space again and took out the blood ring. However, when he took out the blood ring, Xiao Hua's mind found something different. What is this? Xiao Hua stretched out his hand, and a blood-like, five-colored crystal fell into his hand. Why is this thing next to Shang Huoming's god statue? Could it be, this is something from the god statue? Wasn't this god statue sealed in the Jade Rui by the Empress of the 10,000 Demon Realm? -11. Chapter 3108. Jade Archive. Xiao Hua frowned as he looked at the god statue that was already standing upright in his space. Because when the entire space was separated into yin and yang, Xiao Hua didn't see this god statue, so it must have happened after that. And in the following period of time, other than grief, Xiao Hua mainly cleaned up the mess and didn't pay too much attention to the god statue's appearance. Today, not only did the god statue appear, but it also sent out this blood droplet-like crystal. It was really strange. What happened? Xiao Hua pondered for a moment, then looked at Dai who had returned to the appearance of a little girl. However, this girl had been moved to another place by Xiao Hua. Just like Zhang Luer, she couldn't come into contact with other things in the space. Could it be because this girl returned to her human form? Her aura can make this jade scepter release the god statue? But even if the jade scepter can mistake Dai for the 10,000 Demon Realms Empress, this god statue can't send out this crystal for this reason. Jade Archive. Xiao Hua was very puzzled, but suddenly, he grasped at the air again, and a rainbow-colored conch-like object appeared in his hand. An inconceivable thought appeared in his mind. Could it be this thing? This seven-colored conch was found by Xiao Hua in the third great formation. At that time, this thing was stagnant in the corner of the clear time demon formation, which was also the moment before Xiao Hua fell unconscious. Xiao Hua really forgot about this matter. If he didn't remember this matter, he wouldn't know whether to put this thing into the space or not. Xiao Hua's mind withdrew from the space, holding the five-colored crystal in one hand and the seven-colored conch in the other. His eyes narrowed slightly. Although his face was very calm, his heart was like a raging river and overturning sea. The 10,000 Demon Realms Empress said clearly that she came to the Dawn Rain continent to find a person called Ming Hua. This person's status in the 10,000 Demon Realm, the Empress didn't say clearly, but she only mentioned something about the Demon Clan's body extension technique. It was said that it was a supreme technique that only great sage venerables could cultivate. Ming Hua, who could cultivate this technique? How bad could he be in the 10,000 Demon Realm? What was special was that this so-called 10,000 Demon Realm Empress came to the Dawn Rain continent to search for the person. Xiao Hua knew the weight of this person even if he used his heel. But it just so happened that this dark mantra had a connection with Shang Huoming. The statue left behind in Shang Huoming's ancestral temple could actually be absorbed by the goddess's Jade Rui. Xiao Hua understood that the founder of Shang Huoming's sect was most likely related to the dark mantra. Of course, in the millions of Ming Mountains, Xiao Hua also saw a Grand Witch Elder called Ming Hua. But looking at the Grand Witch Elder's ferocious and ugly appearance, Xiao Hua was too lazy to associate him with the delicate empress of the 10,000 Demon Realm. Xiao Hua simply didn't take out the Jade Scepter again. Who cares if that dark mantra is the dark mantra that the empress spoke of? But now, this rainbow-colored conch, which was hidden in the three-layered array, had actually caused the Jade Rui to release the god statue. And the god statue had even released the mysterious five-colored crystal. It could only mean that the rainbow conch had an extremely important connection with the dark mantra. Thinking about the 10,000 Demon Realm again, Xiao Hua could almost conclude that this rainbow-colored conch was the original body of dark mantra. That dark mantra must have also encountered this three-layered array back then. No, it was very likely that there was a great secret in this three-layered array. Dark Mantra wanted to explore this secret with his own power, so he was trapped in the array. But Dark Mantra's cultivation base couldn't resist the corrosion of the Song of Time after all. In the end, he had to transform into his original body and condensed in one place of the array, not daring to move at all to resist this array. If it wasn't for meeting Xiao Hua, Ming Hua probably wouldn't know how long he would stay here. Of course, Xiao Hua's various guesses were based on the premise that the release of the five-colored crystal was due to the rainbow-colored conch entering his space. If there were other reasons that he didn't know, he wouldn't be able to say anything. Under this three-layered array, what secret is hidden? Xiao Hua thought of this, and his gaze became a little distant. Is it an ancient relic? Or a treasure of the Demon Clan? It actually allowed a powerful Demon Clan expert to come from the Demon Realm to the Dawn Rain continent, and even be trapped in this array for so many years? Hee. Thinking of the power of the three-layered array, Xiao Hua looked at the dark rainy night again and mocked himself. Who cares what kind of treasure it is? Not to mention that I don't know the location of the three-layered array. Even if I can find it, I'm afraid I can't go in again. 5 Elements Annihilation Array. All things of the 5 elements will be destroyed by it. Song of Time Demon Array. Even a nascent soul with a lifespan of 1,000 years will be obliterated by it. TSK. The heavens really have eyes for me to be able to take it out to escape. Immediately, Xiao Hua didn't dare to throw away the rainbow-colored conch and also sent it into the space. However, he was far away from Zhang Luer and Dai and didn't let them be together. Then, Xiao Hua was about to send the 5-colored crystal into the space, but he stopped again. He thought to himself, the bone-tempering technique of the Sunset Island has been cultivated for a long time, but I haven't obtained the Earth origin, so the bone-tempering has been unable to reach perfection. This needs to be found, but the primordial spirit left in the bones can't rest. I might as well let it practice Shang Huoming's bone-tempering technique. Since I'm going to cultivate it, I'll also comprehend the 5-colored crystal. That's right. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua's eyes lit up again. Also, that heavenly laws embodiment technique. My physical body seems to have comprehended it, but I can't use it. This Xiao's bones, can they be used? Also, if this rainbow-colored conch is really the dark flower, then this 5-colored crystal is also a holy object. Even if it isn't, I can still obtain some body extension technique from him. Can I cultivate the body extension technique outside of the heavenly laws embodiment technique? Thus, the bone tempering that had been stagnant all this time was further cultivated under Xiao Hua's arrangement. After arranging the bone cultivation, Xiao Hua sent the blood ring back into his body. Although there was no primordial spirit left in his blood vessels, it was just as Xiao Hua had thought before. He had succeeded in cultivating the blood shadow technique. This blood drop paradise was a technique of the devil realm. Using the blood shadow technique to control his blood vessels, and using the black flame and devil chi in the blood ring, he could cultivate it. In particular, Xiao Hua's physical body was a demigod body. It could block all probing with divine sense, so the devil chi in his blood vessels wouldn't leak out. Crack, crack, crack. Xiao Hua had just finished arranging everything for his cultivation and had just pulled his mind out of the mysterious dark cloud of soul cultivation when he heard the sound of heavenly thunder outside. Countless lightning bolts were wreaking havoc on the surface of the Gue, he see as if there was no one there. Ha 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 ha. Xiao Hua laughed a few times. He urged his remaining primordial spirit to fly out of the cave and shouted loudly, "Why is the heavenly law? Life and death come first. The heavenly law is not few. I will follow the path of karma. Today, I will enter the cycle of reincarnation again. I will cultivate the golden body again. Don't talk about looking down on the world. Don't talk about revenge. I will hold up the sky with one hand and kill all the evildoers in the world." Just as he finished laughing, a lightning bolt as thick as a thumb struck down. It was the power of heaven and earth laughing at Xiao Hua's pride. Go! Xiao Hua released the Buddha Sarira. The Buddha Sarira now was different from before. In the past, the Niwen Palace was in the Buddha Sarira. The Buddha Sarira couldn't come out of Xiao Hua's body, so Xiao Hua used the projection of the Buddha Sarira. Now that the Buddha Sarira was reborn, it fell into the sea of consciousness of the Niwen Palace, so it could freely enter and leave the Niwen Palace. As Xiao Hua sent the Buddha Sarira out, the lightning bolt really hit the Sarira. Zilala. A little bit of golden light came out of the Sarira. The storm in the QC had always been the main theme. This storm that Xiao Hua had not encountered for a long time had lasted for more than 10 days. Xiao Hua had even sent the Buddha Sarira into the sky and was continuously bombarded by the heavenly lightning for 4 to 5 days. In the end, the heavenly lightning might have been exhausted. Only then did it stop and change into a torrential downpour. In the beginning, Xiao Hua didn't dare to use his body to touch the lightning of the Buddha Sarira. He could only hide under the Buddha Sarira. Afterwards, Xiao Hua simply took out that indescribable small bucket. The small bucket also attracted the lightning. When the lightning fell into the small bucket, a small amount of lightning leaked out from the small bucket's damaged area and landed on Xiao Hua's body. This little bit of heavenly lightning was undeniably hard for Xiao Hua's body to bear, but every time the lightning struck, the nebula golden core in his lower dantian would flicker and give birth to purple lightning. Moreover, during the lightning strikes, an indescribable feeling of fullness filled Xiao Hua's body and even flowed into the space. Therefore, Xiao Hua gradually used this little bit of heavenly lightning to temper his body. Seeing that the rain had stopped and the clouds had dispersed, a slanting ray of sunlight shone through the thick black clouds, like a sword of light piercing into the sea. That boundless brilliance was born from the waves of snow that were still rolling up. Xiao Hua put away the Buddha Sarira and was about to take out a set of Taoist robes from the space. However, his gaze fell on the extremely dazzling 7-colored brilliance in the waves of snow. He couldn't help but be stunned. Then, he looked left and right in disbelief. He released his divine sense again and looked at the surrounding several hundred zhang. He clapped his hands and laughed. "Ha ha! Isn't this the great flag reef that disappeared? How did it run here?" Sure enough, under Xiao Hua's feet was a messy reef. Countless intersecting reefs jutted out of the sea. Many parts of these reefs were damaged, showing signs of being damaged. Below these reefs, there was a layer of thin, fingernail-sized protrusions. These protrusions were 7-colored and extremely dazzling. At this moment, under the illumination of the sunlight, they refracted the sunlight and looked like 7-colored stone pillars. Wasn't this the great flag reef where Xiao Hua and Xue Xue met Kuaqiao and Qua rhyming in the Gue Sea? The dangers of the great flag reef were still in front of him, but this great flag reef was no longer the great flag reef. That considerate person was also gone. Xiaohua couldn't help but sigh. Things were still the same, but people were different. -11. Chapter 3109. Perhaps it's fate. Xiaohua looked to the west. Although the sun had yet to set, the west was shrouded in mist and he couldn't see anything. He sighed and thought, "It's said that the deeper you fly, the more dangerous it is. Moreover, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth is increasingly scarce and not suitable for cultivation. However, this Xiao has already experienced the dangers of the Qinhe Sea. I didn't expect that in the depths of the sea, there would be a place with such dense spiritual energy. Of course, this Xiao's current cultivation doesn't necessarily rely on spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Since I encountered Great Flag Reef here, this Xiao will cultivate in seclusion here." Immediately, Xiaohua found a slightly flat place and sat down cross-legged. He took out a few refined pills and put them into his mouth. Dragon transformation art and heavenly body bestowment technique were used at the same time. Strands of water-type, spiritual energy of heaven and earth were produced nearby like a hurricane and rushed into Xiaohua's body. Soon, the sun set and the stars filled the sky. Countless astral powers from the outer realms blew down. Not only did it cover Xiaohua, even the vicinity of Great Flag Reef was gradually submerged in the astral powers. Under the Qinhe Sea, the fishes were attracted by the astral powers and gathered together. Unknowingly, several months had passed like this. Xiaohua had gradually become accustomed to this kind of lonely cultivation. Every time he woke up from a short period of seclusion, he would immediately enter the space. Although the inside of the netherworld didn't change at all, Xiaohua's heart was at ease every time he saw the two purple balls on the netherworld bamboo and netherworld lotus. Gradually, the grief and indignation began to calm down. Whether it was the cultivation of the Tao sect or the Buddha's Saraira, they were all steadily recovering. However, the heart of elixir of the Confucian cultivator had once again exceeded Xiaohua's expectations. In just a few short months, Sword Heart Xiaohua had already successfully transformed the foundation of the 18th layer of the Carefree Heart Sutra of the Middle Dantian into the righteous qi of the Confucian cultivator using a secret technique. He had passed through the most basic stage of refining essence into qi of the Confucian cultivator. Moreover, the righteous qi was gradually fusing with the heart of core. When the time was ripe, he could immediately use the torch imparting technique to directly receive the crystallization of Confucianism within the heart of core. Thus, in one fell swoop, he would enter the true stage of refining qi and returning spirit. Xiaohua even has a feeling that with the foundation of the 18th layer of the qi refining realm in his middle dantian, his Confucian cultivation technique might even surpass that of Taoist and Buddhist cultivators, allowing him to refine the spirit and return to the void. He might even be able to reach the final stage of the void refinement fusion stage. Little Yellow, Little Black, and Little Silver also came out of Xiaohua's space many times. Especially after coming out at night and obtaining the Star Force, he no longer wanted to cultivate in the space at night. After Xiaohua heard Xiao Hei's explanation, he suddenly understood. Although he didn't know what was around him at night, it was obvious that this was the thing that he refined when he closed his eyes to refine pills at night. Since this thing was useful to Blackie and the others, he naturally kept them by his side. Time is the song of Zhaoga. After a song is sung, another song will rise. When this Xiao returns to the Dawn Rain continent, it will be the time of Zhaoga's prime. Xiaohua woke up one day and checked his cultivation base. Confidence rose in his heart. He looked in the direction of the Dawn Rain continent in the west and said indifferently. Then, Xiaohua entered the space and took some pills from the green-robed Xiaohua. He came out and was about to take them and go into seclusion again. Little Silver, who was next to Xiaohua, suddenly became impatient and flew to Xiaohua's side. Lying on Little Yellow's back on the reef, Little Silver hurriedly chirped. It was strange. If they were inside the space, Xiaohua would be able to understand what Little Silver was saying, but outside the space, Xiaohua couldn't. Roar, roar. Little Yellow was a little impatient and seemed to be blaming Little Silver. But Little Silver's little tail curled up pitifully in midair and trembled slightly. He held his paws in front of his chest, looking so pitiful that even Xiaohua's heart ached a little when he saw it. Without another word, Xiao Hua sent Little Yellow and the other two into the space. His own mind also turned into a jade archive, and Xiao Hua entered it. What are you doing? Little Yellow's voice rang out. Can't you see that Mummy is cultivating outside? Mummy, Mummy. Little Silver's small voice rang out. Mummy, tell Mummy that I feel something. Let's go. Boy feels that something very powerful is coming. What powerful thing? How come Mummy doesn't know? Little Yellow was about to scold Little Silver when Jade Archive Xiao Hua sucked in a breath of cold air and cursed inwardly. Although Xiao Hua had escaped the pursuit of perfected Du, Yi and kindness Shengzi and escaped with his life through the triple array, it was obvious that perfected Du, Yi and kindness Shengzi had been entrusted by someone to chase after Xiao Hua. The two of them and Xiao Hua had both disappeared. So how could the people behind them not ask about it? Xiao Hua had encountered the triple array, but that didn't mean that everyone who entered the depths of Kueha Sea would encounter it. What if someone else also came after him? Damn it. Jade Archive Xiao Hua almost slapped his forehead. Why did I overlook this? Although Shui predicted that I would definitely be able to escape if I went deep into Kueha Sea, she didn't say that I would definitely be able to escape the pursuit of those two people. I still haven't fully comprehended the capital stars array, and I haven't refined enough jade talismans, so I can't escape their search on Great Flag Reef. Thinking this, Xiao Hua didn't dare hesitate as he hurriedly escaped from the space. He didn't linger at all as he activated the wind escape technique and flew east again. He had only flown for a few li when a powerful and ice-cold divine sense came from the north like frost. It swept past Xiao Hua and immediately locked onto him. An irresistible coldness, mixed with sharpness, instantly pierced Xiao Hua's divine sense. Moreover, it followed the divine sense and attacked Xiao Hua's Naiwan Palace. An image of a figure more than 10 zhang tall, surrounded by black qi, and with a dozen or so huge tentacles instantly appeared in Xiao Hua's mind. Xiao Hua screamed with almost no strength to fight back as he fell from the sky. He fell into the water with a splash. Seeing that Xiao Hua couldn't withstand a single blow, the divine sense that had hit him immediately withdrew and swept elsewhere. However, the remnant divine sense didn't stop as it rushed towards Xiao Hua's Naiwan Palace. Buzz! Golden light flashed on Xiao Hua's Naiwan Palace as the rabbit talisman appeared and blocked the divine sense. Phew! Xiao Hua fell into the water. Seeing that the rabbit talisman was successful, he immediately let out a sigh of relief. He didn't dare to devour the divine sense and allowed it to slowly disappear. Then, he activated his magic power, used the water avoidance technique, and quietly went south from the bottom of the water. After flying for a few li, Xiao Hua came out of the water again. With a flash of black qi, he used the ink trace concealment technique, which was even more handy than before, and quickly escaped towards the east. In the north, less than 100 miles away from the Great Flag Reef, there was a sea beast that was more than 100 feet in size. It was rushing towards the Great Flag Reef at a speed that was several times faster than the flying boat. The sea beast waved its dozens of huge tentacles in the air. Every time it waved its tentacles, there would be a whooshing sound. It was the sound of the air being torn apart by the tentacles. Not long after, the sea beast appeared in the vicinity of Great Flag Reef. With a rumbling sound, a powerful current emerged from the surface of the sea and carried the sea beast into the air. The huge body of the sea beast circled around the entire Great Flag Reef a few times before it landed at the place where Xiao Hua was meditating earlier with a rumbling sound. It paused for a moment. Roar, roar. A few frustrated roars came from the back of the sea beast. Then, the sea beast waved its two tentacles and smashed down on Great Flag Reef. Rumble, rumble, rumble. A series of collapsing sounds could be heard. At least 30% of Great Flag Reef had been destroyed by the sea beast. The sea beast was still unwilling to give up. It suddenly charged into the depths of the sea, causing waves that soared into the sky and crashed against the Great Flag Reef. Its enormous body gradually disappeared, and its direction was the direction that Xiao Hua had headed to earlier. South. Damn it. Xiao Hua used the trace concealment technique to quickly fly towards the east. While escaping, he cursed, This Xiao thought it was those two old bastards from Immortal Ascension School and Immortal Music Sect chasing after me. It turned out to be an extremely powerful sea beast. AI, it's no wonder. This Kueha Sea is the world of sea beasts. It would be strange if there weren't any sea beasts. Unfortunately, this Zhao's cultivation hasn't recovered yet. Otherwise, how could I let you leave so easily? After that, Xiaohua didn't dare be careless. As he flew, he refined the jade talisman for the capital star array, preparing to use it when he reached a safe island. Xiaohua even let little Silver out. As soon as he sensed a terrifying aura, Xiaohua immediately used the trace concealment technique to escape. Like this, he flew for several more months. Although Xiaohua was very cautious, the sea beasts encountered a lot of danger along the way. There were even a few times when he was almost killed by sea beasts, because in the depths of Kueha Sea, there were actually more sea beasts. Furthermore, many sea beasts had special magical abilities that Xiaohua couldn't compare to. There were even some sea beasts that could detect Xiaohua's trace concealment technique and forcibly knock him out. In the end, seeing that the jade talisman for the capital star array had been refined, Xiaohua didn't dare to fly any deeper into Kueha Sea. He knew that although the spirit chi of heaven and earth was a lot richer than before, the deeper he went, the denser it would definitely be. Who knew? He might even reach a paradise. However, he already didn't have the fortune to enjoy it. If he flew any further, he would definitely become food in the stomachs of sea beasts. Let's find an island as soon as possible. Xiaohua released his Buddhist consciousness. Compared to divine thought, Buddhist consciousness was, after all, simple and not easy to discover. This was something Xiaohua discovered after experiencing several dangers. There really weren't many islands in the depths of Kueha Sea, but even so, most of them were occupied by some strange sea beasts. As soon as they saw Xiaohua approach, they would immediately rush out of the island, and even a group of sea beasts would protect the island. Seeing this, Xiaohua was very astonished. This was something he hadn't encountered when he was training in Kueha Sea the last time. Even when he was talking to the island master and elders of Sunset Island, he hadn't heard them mention it. In Xiaohua's eyes, the behavior of these sea beasts was almost the same as that of ordinary cultivators. -11. Chapter 31:10. The sea beasts in the depths of Kueha Sea are really going to become demons. Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he gave in and went to other places to find a place to settle down. Although the strength of many sea beasts was far inferior to Xiaohua's, and Xiaohua was satisfied with the island, it was difficult for Xiaohua to have the idea of forcing them to leave their home. After all, he had escaped far away from home. Putting himself in their shoes, the soft-hearted Xiaohua couldn't be ruthless. Thus, Xiaohua had no choice but to fly towards the east for many days before he finally found a suitable island. This island was not big, only a few kilometers in radius. There were no spirit grasses or spirit trees on it, only clusters of seaweed floating around the island. The entire island was not ordinary. There were no layers of rocks or moist soil. Although the entire island had undulating hills, these hills seemed to be connected. On the hills, the ground between the hills had layers of ripples, as if waves had condensed on it. Xiaohua had been to the Flame Forest Marsh and had seen the flow of magma in the Fire Lake, as well as the appearance of the magma around the Fire Lake. Although he had never seen magma gushing out of QC, he naturally understood the origin of this lava island after thinking about it for a while. Since this lava island had emerged from the bottom of the sea, it must have been born from the Fire Lake at the bottom of the sea. Although the lava was rich in fire attribute world energy, it was not suitable for sea beasts that needed water attribute world energy. Moreover, it was impossible for spirit grasses and other things to grow here, so it seemed that no sea beasts had come to occupy this island. Forget it. Here it is. Xiaohua thought about the sea beast he had just encountered. Its body was incomparably huge. It was not afraid of his spiritual sense attack at all. When the wishful staff hit the sea beast's tail, it only let out a roar. Xiaohua's execution spirit Yuan light was still being sacrificially refined and could not be used. Xiaohua also couldn't use other means and could only flee in panic. He had only flown so far, and had already encountered such a powerful sea beast. If he continued to fly, he would be courting death. Xiaohua's life was very precious now. If there was nothing special, he would never take too much risk. Immediately, Xiaohua used the earth escape technique to dive into the depths of the island. Sure enough, as Xiaohua thought, the fire attribute world energy in the depths of the island was abundant. Unfortunately, the lava island's soil was simply too solid. Xiaohua was unable to go any further after using earth evasion. Xiaohua released his Buddhist perception to take a look. This place was several miles away from the sea surface. Ordinary sea beasts were unlikely to find this place, so they wouldn't be harassed. Especially for this kind of barren island, even if the old farts from the Immortal Music sect and the Immortal Ascension sect came to look for it, they definitely wouldn't care too much. Then, Xiaohua took out the wishful staff and casually chiseled out a space of 10 feet in size. Then, he released a few puppets and flew out again. After Xiaohua had finished inspecting the surrounding 10 miles, he flew back. At this time, a simple cave dwelling that was several tens of feet in size had been opened up by the puppet. Anyway, Xiaohua didn't plan to grow flowers and plants in this immortal cave. It was already enough for him to use. There aren't many islands nearby, and the closest one is around 10 kilometers away. Furthermore, the strength of that strange sea beast is only around the middle stage of foundation establishment. You won't pose any threat to me. Most of the other islands were similar to this one, made of lava. However, they are all extremely small and can't be used. Xiaohua looked around the cave dwelling. He had never been a picky person, so he was very satisfied. He stored the puppet into the space and rubbed his nose as he thought. However, Xiaohua almost jumped up immediately. Damn it, are you kidding me? On the Dawn Rain continent, a foundation establishment cultivator is a senior, a realm that thousands of aura-refining disciples can't reach in their lifetime. However, in the depths of this QC, any random sea beast has the strength of a foundation establishment cultivator. Do you still want me to live? If there really comes a day when the sea beasts of this QC attack the Dawn Rain continent, even if it's the Cultivation 3 countries, it would be difficult to deal with, right? Moreover, I haven't gone to the depths of the QC yet. Just now, I'm afraid the one that almost stopped me was a gold core cultivator. Doesn't that mean there are even nascent soul cultivators inside? Too scary, too scary. I'd better cultivate honestly. Xiaohua was very careful. He was especially cautious as he threw out the jade talismans of the capital star array one by one. He looked at the entire array very carefully several times. Then, he grabbed with his hand. The entire array flickered with brilliance and covered the cave dwelling. It disappeared without a trace from the lava island. Even so, Xiaohua was still not at ease. After a while, he came out of the star array again and released his Buddhist consciousness to explore from the outside for a while. Only then did he feel relieved. He turned to look at the misty place in the west and narrowed his eyes. A rare trace of ruthlessness flashed in his eyes. Then, he turned around and rushed into the island. The sun and the moon are like shuttles, weaving all things in the world. Time is like a song, singing all kinds of things in the world. The Feather Immortal Assembly back then was forgotten by others, and the Great War of Tao and Sword today was still forgotten by others. Even Wu Ming, the nascent soul cultivator who rose rapidly in the Great War of Tao and Sword, no matter how strange Xiaohua's background was, no matter whether Xiaohua was a foundation establishment cultivator or a nascent soul cultivator, no matter whether he was alive or dead, he would be forgotten by others in the end. 100 years was very long, long enough for a mortal to live 2 lives. 100 years was also very short, short enough for an early gold core cultivator to advance to the middle gold core stage. However, 100 years was absolutely important to Xiaohua. He had never been so calm before. He had never gone into seclusion like this before. He had never actively pursued power like this before. Of course, Xiaohua's harvest was also great. In the first 10 years, Xiaohua repaired the damage that the Taoist sect and the Buddhist sect suffered when they passed through the 3 layers of formations, and even converted the true qi cultivated by the Carefree Heart Sutra into the true qi of the Confucian cultivator. In the following 100 years, Xiaohua worked hard in the Buddhist sect, the Confucian cultivator, and the Taoist sect. As for the Confucian cultivator, Xiao Hua used the secret technique passed down by the Confucian cultivator and integrated the core of Dan into his own boundless righteous qi. His entire middle dantian was filled with crimson righteous qi. Just as Xiao Hua expected, when he used the secret technique to convert true qi, he had already passed the refining essence into qi stage of the Confucian cultivator's cultivation method and was advancing towards the refining qi into spirit stage. However, what Xiao Hua didn't expect was that after he entered the refining qi into spirit stage, he actually stopped advancing. The core of Dan that should have disappeared didn't completely disappear, and the true qi that he used the secret technique to convert didn't produce the core of Dan that he expected. Of course, Xiao Hua's hard work wasn't in vain. The thumb-sized crimson outline had already been formed, but it lacked the opportunity to condense. Now, the crimson righteous qi was slowly being condensed into the outline of the core of Dan, and the outline of the core of Dan was actually condensed inside Xiao Hua's sword-shaped primordial spirit. It was compatible with the sword intent of the heart sword, just like the sword heart mentioned in the sword cultivator's cultivation method. Sometimes, when Xiao Hua checked the core of Dan, he was really suspicious. That Huan country's sword cultivator should be a branch of the Confucian cultivator. Wasn't that kind of sword intent that pressed forward and destroyed everything indiscriminately the boundless righteous qi stage? But Xiao Hua didn't understand this core of Dan that couldn't be formed, just like the sword heart that hadn't been condensed before. He checked the only art of Dan in his hands, but couldn't figure it out. Fortunately, although he didn't condense the core of Dan, Xiao Hua also made progress in other aspects over the years. For example, Xiao Hua's 9 stars soaring sun flying sword that disappeared. Because of the art of Dan of Confucian cultivators, the sword intent of these 9 flying swords still existed. Later on, it condensed the outline of the core of Dan. Therefore, when Xiao Hua was comprehending the Confucian cultivator's cultivation method, he suddenly had a wonderful idea. He sent a wisp of the Tai green light into the outline of the core of Dan. Later on, Xiao Hua saw that this method was effective. The Tai green light could actually turn into a sword qi and fly out. It was no different from a flying sword. Therefore, he simply refined a wisp of Tai green light from the innate jellyfish and sent it into the outline of the core of Dan, turning it into another wisp of Tai green light. Now, these 2 wisps of green light were even fiercer than the previous Dream Slayer and Mountain Splitter. Under the control of the 2 primordial spirit images, they directly had the power of a spirit tool. Xiao Hua originally thought that his Confucian cultivator's cultivation method would surpass the Buddhist sect's cultivation method. However, during cultivation, he discovered that his Buddha Sarira's advancement was even smoother than before. Not to mention the daily cultivation of the exquisite Heart Sutra in the exquisite Derivation Pagoda. Just the premonition of a thunderstorm and sending the Buddha Sarira out of the great formation to be struck by lightning also accelerated the growth of the Buddha Sarira extremely quickly. In particular, with the nearly complete exquisite Heart Sutra, Xiao Hua's Buddha Sarira was completely condensed from the beginning. Moreover, every time he completed a layer of cultivation, a lotus would be born on the lotus throne. Before this lotus reached perfection, it would absolutely not allow the Buddha Sarira to enter the next layer of cultivation. Therefore, the cultivation of the Buddhist sect was 10 times more difficult than that of the Confucian cultivators. But even so, Xiao Hua still cultivated the Buddha Sarira to a size of 4 qi. In other words, it was the 4th layer of the Exquisite Leaf Sutra. Moreover, the 4th layer of the Exquisite Leaf Sutra began to gradually condense and advance towards the 5th layer. As for the 9 characters mantra, Xiao Hua had already comprehended the 4th character in the Buddhist sect's ruins. Until now, he had not made any other breakthroughs. What made Xiao Hua feel a little strange was the Buddha fire. Previously, after entering the 3 layers of formation, Xiao Hua saw that the situation was not good and transferred everything in his body into the space. The small bucket and other items in the Buddha fire were also the same. However, the Buddha fire itself could not be moved and could only be placed in the Buddha Sarira. However, as the Buddha Sarira was repaired, the Buddha fire was born again. Moreover, according to Xiao Hua's observation, not only did the Buddha fire not receive any damage, it became even denser. In particular, the originally invisible golden threads could now be faintly seen. They swayed along with the flickering of the Buddha fire, very dazzling. This Buddha fire was the immeasurable karmic fire. Xiaohua already knew. However, he did not know what the golden threads in the immeasurable karmic fire were. However, he still took out the small bucket and used it on the night of the lightning strike. When not in use, he placed it in the Buddha fire to refine it. -11. Chapter 31:11. Compared to the cultivation of Buddhist and Confucian cultivators, Xiaohua's biggest headache was the cultivation of Taoism. The cultivation of Taoism was originally his specialty, but now, it made it difficult for him to make any progress. Xiaohua's golden core in his lower dantian could no longer be seen. However, because it had experienced the 3 elements lightning tribulation, the 5 elements annihilation great array could not completely erase it. Xiaohua could still sense some traces. After that, Xiaohua's cultivation proved that this golden core could still be reformed. However, after 100 years of cultivation, the golden core still could not be formed. However, it was also wrong to say that it did not form. Xiaohua could clearly sense that the nebula-shaped golden core had different sizes. Moreover, they were all different sizes. Xiaohua could even sense traces of lightning on each golden core. However, his divine sense could not see them. In other words, Xiaohua's current golden core was not only a nebula, it was made up of many golden cores. Moreover, he had refined it into a dark core, a golden core that could not be sensed with divine sense. This kind of golden core, how could it conceive a baby? The jade slip in Xiaohua's hands had never recorded this before. Therefore, even though Xiaohua's cultivation had reached the late stage of golden core, he still did not have any signs of conceiving a baby. The most important thing was that he did not know how to conceive a baby and did not know how to do it. Regarding this, Xiaohua could only describe it as the road to happiness is strewn with setbacks. While smiling bitterly, Xiaohua carefully pondered. According to the strangeness of his golden core, it should be related to the 5 elements annihilation great array. That great array that annihilated all 5 elements. Although it did not destroy Xiaohua's golden core that had undergone the 3 elements lightning tribulation, it still left behind a source of trouble. The golden core could not be formed normally. Also, it was related to Qin Jian's invisible golden thread sword. At that time, Xiaohua was holding this sword. The main body of this sword was also part of the 5 elements. Naturally, it could not escape the great array's annihilation. But this flying sword was formless. The material within it might have surpassed the 5 elements and could not be obliterated by the great array. And this formless material had been rushed into Xiaohua's dantian by the great array, fusing together with the traces of Xiaohua's golden core. This might be the reason why Xiaohua's golden core was formless. In addition to cultivating Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucianism, Xiaohua's blood drop paradise had also made small progress. His blood was originally the bright red of his bloodline, but now it was mixed with strands of devil qi. Within the devil qi, there were countless devil lights. These devil lights were sparkling and translucent, almost condensing into crystal threads. Within these crystal threads, there were also golden threads that divine will could not detect. As for the heavenly man-body infusion technique, heavenly laws embodiment technique, dragon transformation art, and the others, they had also made great progress. However, these improvements were still lacking compared to the main cultivation method that he had been cultivating. Forget it. On this day, Xiaohua came out from his meditation. He stood up impatiently and said in self-mockery, "It seems that I really don't have the fate of being pregnant." After reading these nascent soul cultivation methods, there was no improvement at all. If I don't return to the Dawn Rain continent to find some opportunities, I'm afraid that I can only seek breakthroughs in other areas. However, if I want to refine Buddhism and Confucianism to the spirit-severing stage, it will be extremely difficult. As he spoke, Xiaohua flew out of the capital star formation and rushed to the surface of the Guihe Sea. It was noon, and the scorching sun was overhead, making the entire surface of the water hot. Xiaohua squinted his eyes and looked to the west. His eyes turned, and he said in a strange tone, "It's already been 100 years. Why haven't those 2 old monsters come to find me? Could it be That they really think that I have fallen? Or perhaps they have already come, but they didn't discover my capital star formation. Yes, the 2 seals on my body have already been broken, even if they, damn it. Thinking up to here, Xiao Hua slapped his forehead and immediately came to a realization. That's right, since there is no seal, even if the 2 of them come before me again, as long as I use the sky-stealing, sun-swapping secret technique, how could they recognize me? However, Xiao Hua immediately shook his head. Forget it. I definitely can't take this risk. They are at least spirit-severing stage-old monsters. What kind of methods do they have? I will definitely not return to the Dawn Rain continent if I don't have absolute confidence. Humph, I can't afford to provoke those 2 old monsters. That old monster not far from me is probably not my opponent now, right? Today, I will go and find him. Xiao Hua's gaze moved from the west to the north, and the corners of his mouth revealed a trace of a smile. It turned out that when Xiao Hua was in seclusion, he would often come out to find some fun from time to time. Starting from the island closest to him, within a radius of 1,000 li, the sea beasts on hundreds of islands of various sizes were provoked by Xiao Hua for no reason. The strength of the sea beasts on these islands was also very different, from foundation establishment to nascent soul. Xiao Hua was almost invincible among the sea beasts within 1,000 li. However, 10 years ago, Xiao Hua encountered a sea beast with a large body, a strong body, and profound magic power. After 300 rounds of battle, he was no match for it, and was chased for several hundred li. In the end, he had to rely on the Demon Realm's concealment technique to escape. Now that Xiao Hua was depressed, wasn't it precisely to find that sea beast to vent his anger? Rumble, a thunderous sound was emitted from Xiao Hua's body. Lightning flashed, and Xiao Hua's figure streaked across the sky, flying straight towards the north. Wherever the thunderous sound passed, on the large and small islands, many sea beasts withdrew their heads. They originally wanted to come out of their caves, but they also immediately hid back. They originally wanted to release their divine sense, but they also hurriedly retracted it. The thunderous sound in broad daylight was really familiar to them. They knew that the monster who only fought with them, but never used any killing moves. Every time he made a move, his flesh would be torn open. Very quickly, in front of Xiao Hua, there was a lush green island. It was perhaps several tens of li in size. There were many huge trees towering on the island, like towers. The branches and leaves of the huge trees were like treasured swords, and at the top of the branches and leaves, there were fruits that were even bigger than a head hanging. Under the huge trees, the entire island was covered with fine, white sea sand. On top of the sea sand, many crabs and other sea creatures were swimming carefreely. It was the image of an immortal island. Compared to Xiao Hua's island, it couldn't be mentioned in the same breath. Xiao Hua still hadn't flown close when a cold divine sense swept over from the island. Xiao Hua also didn't hold back, and similarly released his divine sense. Crackle, crackle, crackle. Like firecrackers, Xiao Hua still hadn't seen that sea beast, but he was already fighting with it using his divine sense. Roar, an angry roar that could almost resound several li came from the depths of the island. Obviously, it had suffered a hidden loss from Xiao Hua in the battle of divine senses. Soon after, the entire island rumbled, and immediately, a sea beast that was no less than 200 zhang in size flew out from the island. This sea beast was very strange. It had a square shape, and on top of its triangular head, 2 large eyes emitted a gloomy brilliance. Its square body was orange-red, and fist-sized protrusions were connected to each other all over its body. This sea beast had 4 tentacles. The front 2 were extremely long, more than 10 zhang in length, and the back 2 were slightly shorter. These 4 tentacles were also dark in color. The tentacles were like scissors, several feet long, and when it waved, a cold light flashed. This was the first time Xiao Hua saw this sea beast, and he almost thought it was a huge crab. Moreover, this sea beast's shell was very hard. Xiao Hua's suppressing cloud seal smashed down, but it couldn't smash the shell. It was very strange. Of course, the strangest thing wasn't this. What puzzled Xiao Hua the most was that when this sea beast flew, there was a layer of mist under its body, as if there was a layer of faint mist supporting it. Xiaohua really couldn't understand what kind of flying technique this sea beast was using. Haha, old monster crab. Xiaohua laughed, waved his hand, and took out the 3 feet-long wishful staff and shouted, "This Zhao's weapon has finally been successfully refined. Today, I will let you know this Zhao's methods." Saying that, Xiaohua waved his hand and shouted, "Grow." The wishful staff really grew to Tinzhong, and after a few more grow, the entire wishful staff grew to a length of Tinzhong, seemingly not inferior to the sea beast's tentacles. Looking at the wishful staff in his hand, Xiaohua smiled with satisfaction and held the wishful staff. Speaking of refining the wishful staff, it was also beyond Xiaohua's expectations. He thought that the heaven-pacifying staff was extremely easy to refine, and that it would take at most 10 years to refine it. But when he really refined it, he realized the trouble inside. To refine ordinary magic tools and magic treasures, he only needed to quench the impurities in the materials to use it. But the heaven-pacifying staff was different. The 5 elements were the 5 elements, and any other trace could not be integrated into the 5-element star disk. Therefore, the countless materials in the soul nest were refined by the primordial spirit transformed green-robed Xiaohua bit by bit using the thunder refining technique. After refining for 100 years, he finally finished refining the materials for the heaven-pacifying staff. Fortunately, Xiaohua had obtained the thunder refining technique. Otherwise, it was really impossible to refine the 5 elements materials so pure. Later, it took more than 10 years to use the blood refining technique to fuse these materials with the 5-element star disk. Finally, the wishful staff in Xiaohua's hand was also fused into it, refining it into a better wishful staff than the heaven-pacifying staff. In the hands of Xiaohua, the wishful staff could be shrunk to the size of an inch, and the largest could be Tinzhong, with a thickness of a few feet. Although it could not really reach the point of reaching the heavens, Xiaohua was happy to scratch his ears and cheeks. Today, Xiaohua dared to provoke the sea beast again because of the success of the wishful staff. Roar, seeing Xiaohua waving the wishful staff, the sea beast roared and waved the 2 tentacles in front of its head. Kacha-kacha, sounds came from the tentacles and hit Xiaohua's wishful staff. With a loud ka sound, the wishful staff hit one of the sea beast's tentacles, and several sparks were produced. The sea beast's figure retreated a few feet. Looking at the tentacle that was hit, there were some cracks in front of it like a flying sword. The sea beast spat out a breath of clear air, which fell on the tentacle, but the cracks quickly healed. -11. Chapter 31:12. Oh! Xiaohua was also stunned when he saw this. He laughed and said, "It turns out that the old monster Xia also has a secret technique. However, today is different from the last time. This Xiao will let you see this Xiao's secret technique again." As he spoke, his body trembled. Grow. Following this mantra, a ball of golden light appeared around Xiaohua's body. Then, a whirlwind appeared, and countless water-type spiritual energy of heaven and earth rushed into Xiaohua's body along with the heavenly laws embodiment technique. Very quickly, a 30-meter-tall Dharma idol appeared in front of the sea beast along with Xiaohua's body. The sea beast didn't seem to understand what Xiaohua was doing. When the Dharma idol appeared, the sea beast suddenly woke up, roared, and rushed toward Xiaohua without fear. "Grow," Xiaohua shouted again. The thickness of the wishful steel staff was a few feet long, and it was held in the hands of Fa Xiong. Woo! The sound of the wind whistling came from the head of the staff. Boom! There was a loud noise, and it hit the tentacles of the sea beast with great accuracy. As Xiaohua's staff fell, the tentacles of the sea beast immediately turned into powder, and a mass of water-blue blood sprayed out and scattered in the sea breeze. Moreover, the huge body of the sea beast was also repelled by the staff. "Ha ha ha," Xiaohua laughed. "Eat this Zhao's staff again." Immediately, Xiaohua's staff avoided the water-blue brilliance on the tentacles of the sea beast and hit the body of the sea beast. Boom! There was another loud bang, and a water-blue brilliance was born from the head of the staff. Unfortunately, this brilliance was instantly shattered by the staff. Similarly, after the brilliance, there was a kachet sound. The previous defense that could not be broken by the seal of turning the sea was like a clay sculpture under the heavy blow of the staff, and cracks immediately appeared. Xiao Hua had no doubt that as long as he added another strike, the body of the sea beast would definitely be smashed into powder, just like the tentacles of the sea beast just now. Wong. But at this moment, Xiao Hua had just raised the staff, and a slight roar was born from the sea beast's body. A watery brilliance followed the sea beast as it opened its mouth. In an instant, it surrounded an area of several dozen feet. Xiao Hua's magic power was immediately confined, and even his divine sense was forced back into his Niwen palace. Not only that, but Xiao Hua's Dharma idol flashed with brilliance and quickly shrank back into his body. Even the wishful steel staff fell into his hand and turned into a 3-foot size. It was as if Xiao Hua's spiritual power was insufficient, and he was forced to defend himself. However, just as the sea beast opened its mouth and extended its sword-like tongue towards Xiao Hua's forehead, Xiao Hua sneered and opened his mouth. Puff! Primordial unity azure light flew out, streaking through the air like a waterfall. Crack! Crack! Several crisp sounds rang out. In the blink of an eye, the Tai azure light rolled several times around Xiao Hua, and the space sealed by the sea beast was immediately shattered. The sea beast was so scared that it hurriedly retracted its tongue. Ha ha ha! Xiao Hua laughed and threatened with the wishful steel staff in his hand. Old monster crab, eat this Xiao's staff again. Poof! Not waiting for Xiao Hua to raise the wishful staff, the sea beast hurriedly opened its mouth again, and a dazzling brilliance emerged from there, and a water blue bead flew out of the sea beast's mouth. This bead was not round, but square. The brilliance around the bead was also condensed, and its shape was very similar to the sea beast's. With the appearance of the bead, an aura that swept across several miles was born from the bead, firmly covering Xiao Hua. This aura was terrifying, wild, and bloodthirsty. 2 thin crystal threads shot out from the eyes of the sea beast on the bead and pierced towards Xiao Hua. With a crack, the Tai azure light immediately cut the crystal threads. Unfortunately, the crystal threads flickered and the Tai azure light cut through nothing. Amazing! Xiao Hua's expression did not change as he praised. Then, with a wave of his hand, a sword gourd appeared in his hand. Quick! Xiao Hua pointed his finger, and a faint gray color appeared from the sword gourd. This gray color seemed to have a nose and eyes, but now it was too blurry and could not be seen clearly. However, with the appearance of the gray color, the unclear mouth and nose faced the sea beast. The sea beast's bead immediately stopped in midair, and even the crystal threads were instantly retracted. At the same time as the crystal threads were retracted, 1 green and 1 red sword light flew out and landed on the sea beast's neck. Of course, it only landed on the bead, not on the bead. Hee hee, this 3-legged golden crow soul essence is really powerful. It can even nail the soul essence of this sea beast. Xiao Hua looked at the sword gourd in his hand, and the sword light that landed on the sea beast's neck and smiled proudly. This sword gourd was naturally the execution spirit yuan light that was refined into the 3-legged golden crow's soul essence. Return. Xiao Hua knew that this sea beast's cultivation was not easy. Unless it was absolutely necessary or he needed this sea beast to refine some magic treasure, Xiao Hua would not easily make a move. Along with Xiao Hua's incantation, the gray color on the sword gourd entered the sword gourd, and the 2 sword lights also flew back from the sea beast's neck and were about to enter the sword gourd. But right at this moment, a PU suddenly occurred. The oceanic beast's aqua blue pearl suddenly opened its mouth, and a watery brilliance sprayed out and instantly landed in front of Xiao Hua. Damn it! Xiao Hua did not know whether to laugh or cry. He knew that this sea beast could not distinguish right from wrong and did not know that he was being lenient. Now that it had a chance to live, it immediately counterattacked. Fortunately, Xiao Hua's execution spirit yuan light was in midair. Xiao Hua did not use any other magic and pointed his finger. Shua shua. The 2 sword lights landed on the brilliance. He thought that the execution spirit yuan light would definitely be able to scatter the brilliance. However, What was even more out of Xiao Hua's expectations was that when the execution spirit Yuan light landed on the brilliance, it was as if it was stuck. It was simply unable to cut it. When the brilliance arrived in front of Xiao Hua, an extremely strange sweet fragrance mixed with the smell of meat rushed into Xiao Hua's mouth and nose. Xiao Hua's mind sank. It was as if endless illusions rushed into his mind. Xiao Hua was greatly shocked. He did not dare to be negligent and hastily used the God Guidance secret technique. At the same time, he felt his mind become clear. A burst of ear-piercing sizzling sound was heard. It turned out that at this moment, the watery brilliance had already eroded Xiao Hua's protective golden light. It actually destroyed a lot of Xiao Hua's Taoist robe. At the same time, Xiao Hua's faintly pale golden skin was exposed under the Taoist robe. This watery brilliance is actually so powerful. Xiao Hua felt a numbing pain on the surface of his skin, as if it was being bitten by ants. He could not help but be slightly astonished. He was clear in his heart that in the past 100 years, when he used the heavenly thunder of the heavenly sea to temper the Buddha's Sarira, he also used the celestial body strengthening technique to temper his physical body. Right now, his physical body was perhaps several times stronger than before. This sea beast's innate divine ability was really powerful. Roar, seeing that the brilliance had already succeeded, the sea beast roared again. The blue pearl flashed again and spat out several more brilliances. This brilliance was even faster than before. Forget it, Xiao Hua originally wanted to check his own cultivation. Seeing that the sea beast had spat out these brilliances and that the blue color on the pearl had weakened, he knew that it was about to go all out. He really did not have any reason to take the sea beast's life. With a thought, lightning flashed around his body and forced the blue brilliance away. His figure soared into the sky. With a splash, he crashed into the heavenly sea. Roar! The sea beast was actually happy. The floating cloud under its body moved and chased after Xiao Hua. Naturally, the blue pearl also entered its mouth. However, when the sea beast reached the edge of the island, it stopped again. A sea beast that could cultivate to nearly nascent soul strength. Although it had not transformed, it already had intelligence. How could it really chase after him? Woo! A clear sound came from the sea beast's mouth. A several zhang thick beam of light then rushed out from the sea beast's mouth and landed on the heavenly sea. A dense water-based spiritual energy of heaven and earth was born from the beam of light and fell into the sea beast's stomach. The previously dim pearl gradually recovered its luster. Sigh, this soul execution vital light. At this moment, Xiao Hua was using the water avoidance art to travel in the heavenly sea. In his hands were two flying swords of the soul execution vital light. At this moment, the flying swords could no longer be called flying swords. They were two sparkling and translucent jade-like objects. They jumped around in Xiao Hua's hands as if they had intelligence. Xiao Hua's gaze fell on the two flashing brilliances and he could not help but sigh. They can already be used as spirit artifacts. It's a pity that they are not too sharp. They are somewhat inferior to the Tai green light. However, this Tai green light is part of the 5 elements and cannot be refined into the soul execution vital lights yin and yang. In the future, I still need to find the magnetic aurora. After retrieving the soul execution vital light, Xiao Hua looked at the jade green seabed. Countless large and small fishes swam around leisurely. His heart moved. That's not right. This old monster Xie should already have the strength of a Yuanying. In the Dawn Rain continent, it is a master of an area. If we were to talk about it, even if it is not an 8th grade monster, it should be a 7th grade monster, right? Why is it still unable to transform? If this old monster Xie transformed, what would it look like? I understand. Xiao Hua laughed as he thought. Suddenly, he realized. This old monster Xie is actually not a 7th grade monster. Perhaps it is only a 6th grade or even a 5th grade monster. However, it is not an ordinary sea beast. It has a powerful body. What is special is that in this heavenly sea, it can fight with other sea beasts. In addition, the water-based spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the heavenly sea is very dense. This is where the sea beasts can use their divine abilities. Therefore, even though the old monster Xie's cultivation is low, its strength is outstanding. At the very least, it far surpasses the ordinary cultivators of the Dawn Rain continent. This is the reason why it is commonly said that overseas cultivators are more powerful than Dawn Rain continent cultivators. In that case, this Xiao can also be considered as an overseas cultivator, right? Xiao Hua chuckled. He slightly raised his head and his gaze landed on a string of bubbles in the distance. Oh, I'm afraid it is the corpses of some sea beasts. Under the bubbles, a large lump of black thing slowly floated up. Xiao Hua took a look and flew over. There are many sea beasts in this heavenly sea. They would often fight for islands and other reasons. Even though Xiao Hua did not deliberately attack and kill these sea beasts, the number of sea beast corpses he picked up in the vicinity was extremely large. -11. Chapter 31:13. Although the monster cores in these sea beast corpses are gone, their bodies are extremely tough. Whether it's their tentacles, claws, etc., even their shells are the best materials for refining magic tools. How can Xiao Hua not take them when he sees them? Therefore, when he sees something appear again, he goes over very naturally. However, when he reaches the thing floating in front of him, Xiao Hua frowns again. He sees that it's a few corpses connected together. The corpses no longer have flesh, only fragments of skeletons are left. Even the skeletons have shrunk into a few short joints, as if the corpses were burned by waves of fire. Outside the corpses, there are some damaged armors. Most of the armors are greenish-black in color. There are also condensed beads of different sizes on the surface of the armors, like a layer of greenish-black pearls. From the looks of the armors, it's very obvious that these corpses should be cultivators. However, what puzzles Xiao Hua is that these skeletons are very thick, far beyond Xiao Hua's understanding. Xiao Hua makes a rough estimate. They should be 2 to 3 times stronger than ordinary cultivators. What's going on here? Xiao Hua sees that the armors are already damaged. There's no possibility of refining anymore. He doesn't move forward, only looking at those strange skeletons in a daze. Oh, Xiao Hua takes another look. On one of the skeleton's joints, there's a thumb-sized semicircular ring. It's a storage ring. Xiao Hua understands. His eyes brighten. He grabs the semicircular ring and it falls into his hand. Sure enough, when his divine sense enters it, there's a small space that's about to collapse inside. Inside this space, there's a strange thumb-sized thing floating. Xiao Hua takes that thing out. Seeing that the corpses have already passed over his head and floated to the surface of QC, he sighs and throws that already burned storage ring into QC. The thing in Xiao Hua's hand looks black, but there are bits of gold inlaid inside, like bits of gold light in the dark night. Although this thing is thumb-sized, it's not light. However, when Xiao Hua's divine sense sweeps over it, he can't see anything strange about it. Truly strange. Xiao Hua weighed the thing in his hand. The overseas cultivators are indeed different from Dawn Rain continent. These things should be used by the Scorching Sun Island, the Icicle Island, the Gales Island, and the Yinsen Island, which Kuaheng mentioned. Unfortunately, apart from a token and a serairo with a Buddha statue on it, Xiao Hua didn't obtain any secret techniques from the storage bag and storage ring, so he didn't know how to examine them. Let's cultivate first. Xiao Hua thought for a moment and suppressed the idea of going to the 4 islands. The 2 spirit-severing stage-old monsters will definitely place their disciples in the 4 islands. I haven't cultivated to the nascent soul stage, so I can't be sure of victory. I definitely won't appear. Right. Didn't he obtain many body mutilation secret techniques in Inkcloud Dark Forest? Now that the primordial spirit of the green-robed man was no longer refining the sky-leveling staff, it was better for him to read more about those secret arts. Who knows, he might be able to find something. Moreover, this Xiao's Buddha Seraira has already reached 4 feet. It's time for me to cultivate this Buddhist sect's Heaven's Eye to the 4th level. Speaking of this, the Ardent Fire Mountain secret techniques are really useful. Although this Heaven's Eye is a Buddhist sect's magical ability, with the help of the secret techniques and Inkcloud's brain, the advancement is equally miraculous. If I can cultivate this Heaven's Eye to the 9th level, I'm afraid I can really see the 9 heavens and the 9 underworlds. Soon after, Xiaohua flew to another place and found a few powerful sea beasts within 1,000 miles to fight a few times. Moreover, he casually found some things in the nearby sea. Soon, he returned to the cave and began to cultivate in seclusion again. Several years passed quickly. On this day, the wind was calm and the waves were calm. The sun had just risen above the sea. Countless seabirds spread their wings and soared between the sea and the sky. On the rippling sea surface, there were also tens of thousands of sea fish swimming. From time to time, there would be pillars of water soaring to the sky in the distance. At the same time, the faint roar of sea beasts would follow. It seemed that this day was no different from an ordinary day in 10,000 years. A clear cry sounded. From the northern horizon, a speck of 5 colors appeared. When it got closer, it was a several zhang large rainbow wand. One could see the rainbow wand spreading its 5-colored wings. With a clear cry, it split the sky and immediately flew more than 10 li. The 2 long tail feathers on the rainbow wand's tail slightly trembled. It was very eye-catching in the fierce wind that rolled up behind the rainbow wand. On the rainbow wand's back sat a woman. This woman looked to be around 30 years old. She looked very dignified. The woman had a pair of bright eyes that seemed to be able to see through the various states of the world. However, at this moment, her eyes were lowered to look at the misty sea surface. She was faintly anxious. The strangest thing was that this woman wasn't wearing an ordinary Taoist robe. Instead, it was a crescent moon white robe. This robe was very simple and didn't have any colored thread. What was special about this woman was that she even wore a strange hat on her head. Between the hat and her ears, there wasn't a single strand of black hair. Stop! The woman suddenly opened her mouth. Her pearly white teeth were slightly exposed. Her words were also different from the common speech of the Dawn Rain continent. The rainbow wand was very intelligent. Its fluttering wings immediately retracted. At the rainbow wand's belly feathers, a 5-colored cloud appeared and supported the rainbow wand. The several zhang large rainbow wand and the strange woman stopped in midair. The woman stood up from the rainbow wand. Her brows were still slightly furrowed. She raised her leg and stood in midair. A faint cloud of mist appeared under the woman's feet. This woman was actually barefoot. Her sparkling and translucent jade-like ankles looked very soft and smooth, emitting a faint brilliance. As she stepped on the cloud of mist, an indescribable elegance was born from it. The woman stood on the cloud and lowered her head to look at the vibrant sea surface. Then, she frowned slightly and actually closed her eyes. However, the woman's ears on both sides emitted a faint luster. This luster flickered slightly, as if the woman was using a divine ability. After a long time, the woman's ears moved. She raised her eyebrows and her brows relaxed. However, when the woman opened her eyes, the luster on her ears had disappeared. The woman stretched out her hand again and took out a small jade slip from her bosom. She glanced at it, and a smile appeared on her face. She seemed to be muttering to herself, "Umitba, this West Sea is really too far away. This so-called island is densely covered in stars. Who can tell which one is which?" Sutanua is really good at scheming. He actually found this place. But, as the woman spoke, she raised her leg and sat on the rainbow wand's back. She gently patted the rainbow wand's back. The rainbow wand let out a clear cry and flapped its wings. The wind surged and the clouds moved as it flew into the distance. The woman's voice lingered in the air. "Although this place is far west, it doesn't look extremely desolate. Could it be that place?" The woman flew thousands of kilometers to the west and stopped several times. However, she didn't get off the rainbow wand. Instead, her ears emitted light again and she adjusted her direction several times. In the end, the woman stopped near the lava island where Xiaohua cultivated. "Yes, it should be here." The woman finally took out the jade slip and checked it before getting off the rainbow wand's back. She stepped on the clouds and stopped in midair. The rainbow wand spread its wings and flew around the woman. At this time, the clouds were scattered and light mist was gushing out. The afterglow of the setting sun scattered everywhere. Not only were the clouds gorgeous and the light mist faintly discernible, but even the rainbow wand's feathers reflected the orange sun and looked extremely poignant. The woman looked at all of this with a slight smile. Her eyes flickered as if she was a little obsessed. Roar! In just the time it took to drink a cup of tea, there was another roar. However, after this roar, there were roars and hisses frequently. Bursts of explosions and rumbles also followed. The originally calm scenery was completely destroyed. Not only was the rainbow wand's flight a little weak, but the woman's faint smile also disappeared. There was a trace of displeasure in her eyes. Just as this displeasure appeared, whoosh, on the surface of the sea to the south, a wave of several dozen feet was set off. The wave dispersed the mist and rushed to the bottom of the woman's body with strands of blood. Boom! There was a loud sound that soared into the sky. The waves seemed to be boiling as they surged up. One by one, a several dozen feet tall human figure suddenly appeared from the waves. The moment the human figure appeared, it immediately let out a roar towards the sky. A formless sound wave quickly spread out. When the rainbow wand, who had already stopped flying, heard this sound, its wings couldn't help but tremble. Its body also quickly shrank. Humph! When the woman saw this, she coldly snorted. Her body emitted a faint brilliance that covered the rainbow wand. The rainbow wand landed in front of the woman. The woman shook her sleeve, and the rainbow wand flew into it and disappeared. Looking at the human figure again, it had already stopped in midair. The waves that surrounded the human figure had already fallen, creating a splash of water that was several dozen feet tall. It gradually disappeared. Looking at the human figure again, it wasn't a real person. Aside from the khaki-colored armor on its body, its strong limbs were very similar to a human's, but its head was a hairy leopard's head. This leopard's head was very ferocious. The khaki-colored pupils in its bell-like eyes flashed with bloodlust. Leopard stripes streaked across the mane on its face. A few strands of blood still flowed from its bloody mouth. It had clearly just eaten something raw. In the left claw of the leopard-headed human figure, there was also a sea beast tentacle that was stained with blood. In the right claw, there was a thumb-sized demon core that was releasing a water-blue brilliance. The leopard-headed human figure's ferocious gaze swept past the woman. There was a flash of surprise in its eyes. It opened its bloody mouth and unexpectedly spoke. "Little girl, are you the immortal friend that Sue Swansea invited?" "Humph." The woman indifferently glanced at the leopard-headed human figure and coldly snorted. She didn't answer. "Roar, I'm asking you a question." The leopard-headed human figure suddenly opened its bloody mouth. A strong stench rushed out and rushed toward the woman. "You're courting death." The woman clearly looked down on the leopard-headed humanoid and did not bother to reply. Seeing the leopard-headed humanoid being so rude, the woman coldly snorted and pointed her finger. A huge fireball flew out from the air and exploded between the two with a bang. It was precisely the leopard-headed humanoid's breath that was incinerated. Moreover, dozens of sparks flew out from the fireball and split into 3 different directions, rushing towards the leopard-headed humanoid. -11. Chapter 31:14. The leopard-headed humanoid squinted his eyes and waved his claws. The tentacles and monster core of the sea beast disappeared at the same time. Then, he waved his right claw in the air and a yellow brilliance appeared. It turned into a dozen plumes of smoke and dust that rushed into the sparks. Boom, boom, boom. After a series of muffled sounds, the sparks disappeared and the smoke and dust slowly dispersed. The woman raised her eyebrows and seemed a little surprised. Then, she raised her jade-like hand slightly and a golden cauldron the size of a fist appeared. As soon as the small cauldron appeared, the space within a foot of it distorted rapidly. It was as if the temperature of the small cauldron was so high that it was about to melt the space. The space-splitting cauldron? You're Ching Chun from the Great Snow Mountain. The leopard-headed humanoid was slightly stunned when he saw the small cauldron. He could not help but exclaim in surprise. "Yes, it's me." The woman heard him and replied proudly, "If you're afraid, tell me your name immediately and let me see where you're from. If you're related, I'll let you off for the sake of Suzhual Yang. Otherwise, otherwise, what can you do?" The leopard-headed humanoid sneered. He opened his mouth and a square box the size of a thumb flew out. The box was square and did not look special. However, when the leopard-headed humanoid breathed a mouthful of demonic aura on it, a reddish-yellow brilliance rushed into the air and a mountain peak a few feet high appeared in the brilliance. The magnificent mountain box? How did you get this treasure? Seeing this, Master Ching Chin's expression changed, and his hand that was controlling the space-splitting cauldron slowed down. This treasure was originally mine. Where did I get it from? The leopard-headed humanoid sneered. Although your space-splitting cauldron is powerful, it can't do anything to my magnificent mountain box. Do you still dare to fight with me? Why wouldn't I dare? I'd like to see, what ability do you have to control the magnificent mountain box? Master Ching Chun sneered. He lifted his hand and a tricolored flame rushed out from the space-splitting cauldron. Don't worry, my two fellow immortals. At this moment, a loud voice came from afar. Humph! When Master Ching Chan heard this, he bent the middle finger of his right hand and flicked it gently. The 3-foot-long fire dragon that had flown out of the cracked void cauldron returned to the small cauldron. When she looked up, she saw a golden sword light flying toward them from the eastern horizon like a meteor. In just a moment, a middle-aged man with thick eyebrows and big eyes dressed in a scholar's robe appeared in front of them on a flying sword. Humph! The leopard-headed man also snorted coldly. He opened his mouth again and spat out a mouthful of demonic energy. The so-called magnificent mountain box shrank back to the size of a thumb and fell into his mouth. It's all my fault. As soon as the middle-aged man landed, he immediately cupped his fists and said with a smile, because this treasure hunt in the West Sea is too important, I didn't dare to neglect it. Therefore, other than this one's name, this one did not reveal the names of the others. My apologies for causing a misunderstanding between the two of you. It doesn't matter. Master Ching Chun smiled faintly and said, Su Tanyua has already made this clear. You don't have to apologize now. Su Swansea, the leopard-headed man opened his mouth and shouted, I know you have a wide range of friends, but I still underestimated you. The little beauty of the Great Snow Mountain was not someone ordinary people could meet. You actually invited her here. Your relationship is definitely not ordinary. This middle-aged man was Su Zhuoyang, whom Master Ching Chun had mentioned. However, when Su Zhuoyang heard this, his expression did not change at all. He glanced at the leopard-headed man indifferently and said with a smile, Leopard Immortal, you are frank and outspoken. You say whatever is on your mind. You are much better than ordinary people with dirty thoughts. However, I still have to disappoint Leopard Jinren. Among the treasures of the West Sea, there's something that Master Pure Dust wants. Therefore, although I'm only acquainted with the Dharmakaya, once I asked for your help, you immediately agreed. Ha ha ha, I don't believe it. The leopard-headed humanoid named Leopard Spiritual Master laughed. But at this moment, the sound of a crane's cry came from the distant horizon. Su Zhuoyang and the others looked up and saw a faint white spot on the sea surface in the northeast, which was already somewhat dark. Good. Su Zhuoyang clapped his hands and said with a smile, the other two are also here. However, when the white spot flew closer, it was revealed that there was an old man sitting cross-legged on the back of a white crane that was several feet in size. The old man was dressed in a linen robe. His forehead was very wide. His eyes were very bright, and his white hair was fluttering like snow. When the old man floated down from the back of the white crane, a white cloud immediately appeared under his feet. Coupled with the emerald cane in his hand, he really looked like an immortal descending to the mortal world. The white crane, like Master Ching Chin's rainbow phoenix, sensed Leopard Immortal's breath from far away and flew very hesitantly. The old man also flicked his big sleeve and kept the white crane in it. Then, he flew over and looked at the three people. He cupped his hands and said with a smile, I greet you all. Su Zhuoyang heard that the old man not only did not report his name, but also frowned slightly with a complicated expression on his face. After returning the greeting, he whispered, What's wrong? That person can't come? Alas, yes. The old man sighed. Man proposes, God disposes. That person has already agreed. I was waiting at the foot of the mountain, but before I left, There was an important matter that he had to attend to. Brother Su, I have failed you. It's okay. Su Zhuoyang's brows relaxed, and he said with a smile, it's best that we have Zen Master Liao Kong. Without him, we can still enter. Zen Master Liao Kong? Master Qing Chun was surprised and asked, are you talking about Zen Master Liao Kong of Huanglian Temple? Yes. Su Zhuoyang said with a bitter smile. Isn't it Zen Master Liao Kong, who is proficient in Buddhist arrays? With his help, we are naturally not afraid of the arrays of the West Sea relic. Therefore, although I am not very familiar with Zen Master Liao Kong, I especially entrusted Brother Chu. Alas, Zen Master Liao Kong definitely can't come at this time. Master Qing Chen sighed. The Feast of All Souls at Dong, and Zen Temple, is about to open. He is going to preach. Hearing this, Su Zhuoyang laughed again. Since Zen Master Liao Kong is not coming, then he won't come. This is God's will. Since we are here, we naturally have our fate. Let me introduce you. This is Brother Chu Muhuan of the Chu family in the hidden immortal continent. Then, Su Zhuoyang raised his hand and pointed at the old man. When the old man heard Su Zhuoyang mention Zen Master Liao Kong's name, he knew that he would not return empty-handed this time. He also smiled and cupped his hands. I am Chu Muhuan. Greetings to the two fellow immortals. I am Qing Chun from the Great Snow Mountain in the Pure Land world. Greetings to Chu Tanyue. Master Qing Chun put her palms together and bowed to return the greeting. I am Leopard's spiritual master from the Flat Forest Mountain in the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm. Leopard's spiritual master raised his two claws casually and cupped his hands casually to salute. Seeing that the three people had finished their greetings, Su Zhuoyang said with a smile, since everyone is familiar with each other, we will be in the same boat in the following time. This West Sea relic is really famous. I have heard about it for many years, but I never thought that one day I would personally come to explore the true face of this treasure. Especially with the help of the fellow immortals, I will definitely return with a full load this time. Su Swansea. Leopard's spiritual master was dissatisfied. We have already introduced ourselves. Why don't you say anything? Although we all know you, this is the basic etiquette of the hidden immortal continent, right? Of course. Su Zhuoyang patted his forehead and said with a bitter smile, I really neglected it. Thank you for your reminder, fellow immortal leopard. Then, Su Zhuoyang cupped his hands and bowed. I am Su Zhuoyang, a disciple of the hidden immortal continent's Fecta sect. I am not proficient in the 6 arts, but I like the art of divination. Thus, I won the title of Divine Diviner. I am not talented, so I am ashamed. That's right. Leopard's spiritual master also cupped his hands and returned the salute. Your hidden immortal continent is known as the origin of etiquette. If you don't remember this basic etiquette in your heart, who would be convinced? Fellow immortal leopard, you are wrong. Su Zhuoyang stood up and said seriously, my hidden immortal continent is the inheritance of Confucian cultivators, which emphasizes on the contention of 100 schools of thought. I naturally don't know who would belittle the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm, but I know that my Fecta sect never asks about one's background. Otherwise, I would not be able to make friends with fellow immortals. Of course I am not talking about you. Leopard's spiritual master laughed. I can come here because of your face. If it was someone else, Leopard's spiritual master glanced at Master Qing Chun, who was not far away. At this time, Master Qing Chun had recovered his solemn appearance. He looked straight ahead as if he did not hear what Leopard's spiritual master said. Su Zhuoyang smiled in his heart. He knew what Leopard's spiritual master meant, but he could not say a word about this matter. Brother Su, Chu Muhuan seized the opportunity to ask, if Zen Master Liao Kong does not come, how can we break the array? Where is the West Sea relic in the West Sea? At this time, you should tell us the location. We can consult together and work together to make sure nothing goes wrong. Hearing Chu Muhuan mention the West Sea relic, Leopard's spiritual master's eyes lit up. His withered yellow eyes no longer looked at Master Qing Chun, but stared at Su Zhuoyang. Yes, Brother Chu is right. Su Zhuoyang nodded and explained, this is the time to discuss it. However, although I am the initiator of this treasure hunt, I am not the only one. What? There are other people? Chu Mu Huan was stunned and frowned. Brother Su, why didn't you say this earlier? I can come to the West Sea because I value your integrity. If it was someone else who initiated it, I wouldn't dare to believe it. -11. Chapter 31:15. Brother Chu, please don't worry. Su Zhuoyang smiled bitterly. He looked at Chu Mu Huan, then at Leopard Taoist Master and Master Qing Chun, and explained patiently, this person's identity is a bit special. Before I see him, I can't reveal his identity. Of course, you three should rest assured. That person's friendship with me is not inferior to yours. If I didn't trust him, I would never have come to the West Sea. Su Zhuoyang turned his hand over, and a thumb-sized black object appeared in his hand. He said, that person has already given this to me. After I checked it, I found that the information recorded in it is detailed and true. It doesn't seem to be fake. Can I take a look at it? Chu Muhuan's brows did not relax as he asked. Of course. Su Zhuoyang did not hesitate. He raised his hand, and the black object flew out. Chu Muhuan grabbed it, and it fell into his hand. Then, Chu Muhuan raised his hand and was about to place it on his forehead when Su Zhuoyang hurriedly shouted, Brother Chu, this object can't be seen with divine sense. You need to use eye-clearing magic. Oh, so strange? Although Chu Muhuan was surprised, there was a hint of joy in his eyes. Then, Chu Muhuan placed his hand in front of Su Zhuoyang's eyes. His eyes flickered with a faint green light. After the time it took to brew a cup of tea, he finally withdrew it. After he closed his eyes for a moment, he raised his hand and the item flew back into Su Zhuoyang's hand. How is it? Leopard Taoist Master could not help but ask. It's true. Chu Muhuan replied calmly. If you don't believe me, you can check it yourself. Hee, if I could see it, would I still need to ask? Leopard Taoist Master laughed. I don't have as many magic skills as you. I'll take a look. Master Qing Chun stretched out her hand, and a jade-like hand came out of her sleeve. Leopard Taoist Master's withered yellow eyes could not help but glance at the delicate wrist. Master, please. Su Zhuoyang handed the object to Master Qing Chun and said with a smile, however, I must remind you that this object can't be seen with Buddhist sense. Hee, I know. Master Qing Chun smiled, took the item, and said, since the divine perception technique of the Confucian school can't be used, the Buddhist perception of the Buddhist sect won't work either. Master Qing Chun took the object and did not use any magical power. Instead, she looked it up and down with her beautiful eyes. After a while, she nodded and said, this is the ink cloud pupil used in ancient records. It has long been lost. Not to mention any recorded method. Even the materials were nowhere to be found. This poor nun has seen the image of this item in a pile of old papers. As he spoke, Wizard Qing Chun raised a Mo Yuntong. However, he did not place it on his forehead. Instead, he placed it next to his ear. A faint light flashed in Master Qing Chin's ears and slowly covered Mo Yuntong. I thought that the heavenly ear connection could only be used for hearing. After practicing the heavenly ear connection, one could hear things from 100 miles, 1,000 miles, or even 10,000 miles away. Who would have thought that the heavenly ear connection could be used in this way? Su Tanyue doesn't practice Buddhism, so he doesn't know about the Buddhist magic. Master Qing Qian opened his eyes and said lightly, how can the heavenly ear connection of the Buddhist sect be so shallow? After practicing the heavenly ear connection, one can not only hear everything, including the sound of heaven, the sound of human beings, and the sound of the three evils, but also recognize the 3,000 macro worlds according to the sound. He can attain the Buddha fruit. Yes, the Buddhist magic is indeed extraordinary. Immortal Leopard nodded vigorously. I never thought that in the Buddhist sect, one could use their ears to judge people. Then why do we need eyes? Of course, we need to use our eyes to see people's hearts. Master Qing Chun said in a cold tone. She took the ink cloud pupil from her ear and handed it to Su Zhuoyang. She said, the content inside should be consistent with what Su Tanyue said. I also believe in Su Tanyue. Good. Su Zhuoyang took the ink cloud pupil and carefully put it away. He said with a smile, thank you for your trust. However, He immediately raised his eyes to look at the dark sea and said, "This is not the place that person invited us to. We still have to hurry and get there before dawn." Who is this person? Immortal Leopard was unhappy. I came from the Holy Land and spent a lot of time. It's fine that he didn't meet us here, but why didn't he wait for us here? Hee. Su Zhuoyang smiled faintly, his eyes flashing with a silver-white brilliance. He looked around and said with great confidence, "Leopard, immortal friend, as long as you see that person, you will definitely not say such words again. That person has a good reason for not coming." With that, Su Zhuoyang looked up at a direction in the distance. His silver-white eyes were particularly eye-catching in the night. A golden sword light appeared under his feet, and he was about to soar into the sky. "Let's go. I'll lead the way. It won't take more than 6 hours." Speaking of this, Su Zhuoyang naturally looked back and glanced at the three people. At the same time, his eyes swept over the lava island under their feet. "Let's go," Immortal Leopard roared around him. He stepped on the wind and flew more than 100 feet away. Seeing that Immortal Leopard had left, Master Qing Chun and Chu Mu Huan waved their sleeves. The colorful Huan and the cloud crane flew out. The two birds stretched their wings in the air, but none of them dared to make a loud sound. Just as they were about to step on their mounts, Su Zhuoyang suddenly said hurriedly, "Wait. Oh, Su Swansea, what's the matter?" Immortal Leopard asked unhappily as the wind stopped. Immortal Leopard, Master Qing Chun, the silver-white color in Su Zhuoyang's eyes had disappeared. It was replaced by a kind of astonishment. "Who arrived here first?" "It's me." Master Qing Chin's face also showed a strange expression. She followed Su Zhuoyang's gaze and looked at the lava island under their feet. "This place. I've already checked it. There's nothing wrong. Could it be that Su Tanyue found something?" Hee. It's really interesting." Su Zhuoyang's face showed a thoughtful expression. "I didn't expect to meet an overseas cultivator in the depths of the West Sea. And the magic array outside the cultivator's cave is also strange. It seems to be very powerful. If my thousand eyes hadn't just improved, I'm afraid I wouldn't have discovered the strangeness inside." When Master Qing Chen heard this, her face changed slightly and became a little hot. She didn't expect that there was an overseas cultivator hiding under the feet of the four of them. It was especially hidden from her heavenly ears, but it was discovered by Su Zhuoyang's thousand eyes. She wanted to activate her heavenly ears again, but after thinking for a while, she gave up the idea. Since she couldn't find it just now, what was the use of finding it now? "See, this is?" When Chu Mu Huan heard what Su Zhuoyang said, he had already displayed his magical power. His eyes were faintly clear like water. After looking for a while, he couldn't help but cry out in amazement, "Brother Su's thousand eyes is really powerful. If you hadn't reminded me, I wouldn't have been able to find the strangeness of this magic array even if I looked at it 10 times. This magic array seems to... After listening to Chu Mu Huan's words, Master Qing Chen's face became less awkward, but she was also very surprised. She asked, "Chu Tanyue, what does this magic array seem to be?" Chu Mu Huan smiled bitterly and shook his head slightly. "This magic array is hidden in the void. I can only see a little bit with my magical power. It seems to be similar to a legendary ancient magic array, but I can't remember what kind of magic array it is at the moment." "Ah?" Master Qing Chan was shocked. "There's such an expert in the West Sea?" Looking at Su Zhuoyang again, he touched his chin with his hand and his eyes flashed with a silver-white color, as if he was thinking about something. "Su Swansea, what's there to think about?" Leopard Genren said anxiously. "Isn't it just right to have someone who is proficient in magic arrays to replace that bald donkey? If he doesn't agree, the four of us can just kill him. What's there to hesitate about?" Leopard Genren, "It's not that simple," Chu Mu Huan said with a smile. "Since there's such an ancient magic array, and he's cultivating in seclusion in the West Sea, the overseas cultivators are usually more tyrannical than us. If we disturb him and can't persuade him, our tracks will be exposed. It's not good for this trip." Although Chu Mu Huan didn't say that the four of them would work together, his tone was extremely obvious. "The overseas cultivators are powerful. I admit it," Leopard Genren sneered. "But along the way, there aren't any powerful sea beasts within 1,000 miles. There's only a sea beast whose strength is between the 3rd and 4th level of essence power in about 800 miles. If there's really an overseas cultivator who's more powerful than us, the surrounding sea beasts wouldn't be so weak, right? Then, the overseas cultivator wouldn't need to use such a magic array to protect himself, right? Although that's the case, the real situation may not be so. Master Qing Qian said faintly, the reason why overseas cultivators are called overseas cultivators is that most of them are cynical and can't coexist peacefully with us 3 continents immortal friends, so they cultivate in seclusion. These overseas cultivators can't be judged by common sense. In addition, many of the overseas cultivators, what they cultivate isn't the ordinary cultivation method of our 3 continents. It has nothing to do with us Confucian cultivators or Buddhist sects. Chu Muhuan frowned slightly as if he thought of something and said in a low voice, their cultivation method is strange, and their divine abilities are even sharper. The 9th level of essence power isn't suitable for their realm. Seeing that Master Qing Qian and Chu Muhuan were refuting him, Leopard Genren's withered yellow eyes rolled. He opened his mouth and was about to spit out demonic aura. Seeing this, Su Zhuoyang hastily flew down a few feet and said anxiously, Leopard Genren, don't be too hasty. Humph. Leopard Genren didn't want to give Su Zhuoyang face, so he snorted coldly and put his claws behind his back. He raised his head and looked at the night sky. A bright moon had appeared in the horizon. The moonlight fell on the surface of the sea like water, and the rarely seen bright white splashes of water surged. Tiny silver fish swam along with the sparkling waves, and the sound of the waves entered their ears. -11. Chapter 31:16. Su Zhuoyang discussed with Chu Muhuan and Master Qing Chun in a low voice for a moment. Then, he raised his voice and said to Leopard's spiritual master, fellow immortal Leopard, I've decided. I'll ask this overseas cultivator to come out. Of course, even if he can help, we can't tell him our purpose now. If he's not willing to help, we'll go by ourselves. You should have done this earlier. Leopard's spiritual master sneered. You can just call for that person. Why ask me? Haha, fellow immortal Leopard, you should stand with us. Su Zhuoyang said carefully, if you stand there, if that overseas cultivator comes out and sees us surrounding him, I'm afraid there will be some misunderstanding. There might be some twists and turns for no reason. Leopard's spiritual master looked at Su Zhuoyang several times and didn't say anything. His figure turned into the wind and floated behind the 3 people. However, he was still 100 feet away and didn't come any closer. Brother Chu. Su Zhuoyang was satisfied when he saw this. He turned around and was about to speak when Chu Muhuan suddenly slapped his forehead and exclaimed, I remember now. This seems to be the legendary heavenly cycle star formation. How is that possible? Su Zhuoyang's eyes lit up. Apart from being surprised, he was also ecstatic. It's said that this cosmic star formation has been lost for a long time. Only the Immortal Palace. Haha, Brother Su, I'm just guessing. I can't be sure. Chu Muhuan's face also showed a trace of joy. If it's the legendary cosmic star formation, this formation isn't something you and I can break. It's not good for us to attack this formation without permission. Brother, please use the cloud crane technique and transmit our goodwill into the formation. Su Zhuoyang urged. Chu Muhuan shook his head slightly. If it's the cosmic star formation, its defense must be flawless. I can't guarantee that the cloud crane can fly in. Let's try it. Su Zhuoyang smiled. If Brother's cloud crane can break through this formation, then our chances of entering the West Sea's lost treasure will be reduced by 20%. Ha 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 ha. Chu Muhuan laughed heartily and made a grabbing motion with his hand. A clear and crystalline light flashed like moonlight, and a 3-inch tall cloud crane phantom appeared. Chu Muhuan softly muttered a few words at the cloud crane's neck. Then, he pointed with his finger. Quick! The cloud crane's body stretched and flew toward the lava island below everyone's feet. As Yunhe charged into the lava, Chu Muhuan's spirit-cleansing eyes and Su Zhuoyang's thousand eyes pupils were activated. They stared closely at Yunhe's figure. A moment later, the unusual phenomenon in their eyes disappeared at the same time. They looked at each other with a trace of understanding in their eyes. Sure enough, the cloud crane's silhouette flew out and landed in front of Chu Mu Huan. Chu Mu Huan waved his sleeve again, and the silhouette disappeared into his sleeve. Looks like this Su will have to take some responsibility. Su Zhuoyang smiled and opened his mouth. A golden sword light flew out. Su Zhuoyang spread his hands and formed a strange sword seal. The golden sword light split into 8 in midair. Buzz. Buzz. It emitted a strong buzzing sound and rushed into the lava. Rumble. The moment the 8 golden lights fell into the lava, the entire lava island let out an earth-shaking sound. The sea near the lava island shook violently. Ouch! Leopard's spiritual master, who was dozens of feet away from the 3 of them, suddenly exclaimed. He had been coldly observing Su Zhuoyang and the others' actions. His eyes were fixed on the sparkling and translucent moon disk. At this moment, along with the violent rumbling of the lava island, countless dark clouds suddenly appeared in the clear night sky around the full moon. Layers upon layers of dark clouds covered the entire area. Although there was no lightning or rain yet, within the layers of clouds, there were faint flashes of light that were beginning to appear. Crackle! A tall and skinny figure emerged from the lava island amidst a series of flashes of lightning and thunder. Before he could reveal himself in midair, a voice that sounded like a ferocious god sneered coldly in the night sky. Hee hee. The 2 old fogies didn't dare to come themselves, so they sent 4 little bastards over instead. Come, come, come. Let this Shao see how you 4 foreign cultivators are going to capture this Shao. Following this furious roar like that of a killing god, countless lightning bolts rained down from the dark clouds in the sky, completely enveloping the 4 of them. 9 heavens lightning strike. Chu Mu Huan was completely stunned. When the lightning and fire were almost within reach, he seemed to have thought of something. He hurriedly threw the rattan cane in his hand and opened his mouth. Swoosh! With a breath of vital energy, the rattan cane suddenly turned into a towering tree. Its green branches and leaves expanded wildly, as if to cover Su Zhuoyang and the others. Master Qing Chun was also shocked. She was even faster than Chu Mu Huan. The space-splitting cauldron rushed out from her hand, and a flame appeared. Suddenly, a huge fireball appeared about 100 feet away, blocking the top of Chu Mu Huan's rattan cane. Fellow immortal, calm down, calm down. Su Zhuoyang's flying sword fell into the lava island and didn't fly out. His face was even more panicked. Seeing the 9 heavens lightning strike, he couldn't understand what Xiaohua was saying. He could only hurriedly shout, "We are fellow immortals from the continent, not foreign cultivators. We are not sent by your enemies. Fellow immortal, you only need to withdraw your magical power, and we will explain everything." The human figure that rushed out of the lava island was naturally Xiaohua. When he saw that the capital star formation was discovered and the sword light fell, he had long suspected that the 2 old ghosts from the Immortal Ascension sect and the Immortal Music sect were here. However, when he saw that the 4 people standing in midair outside the lava island were not old monsters above the nascent soul stage, he didn't take a closer look. He thought that they were cultivators from the 4 islands overseas who came to seek revenge under the orders of the 2 old ghosts. As soon as they met, they used the thunder-attracting technique. Moreover, the spirit-killing vital light and the Tai green light were already prepared. When the 9 heavens lightning strike struck, he believed that even if the 4 of them were of the nascent soul stage, he could definitely kill 1 or 2 of them with a sneak attack. Fellow immortal? However, when he heard Su Zhuoyang call him fellow immortal, and the language was very different from the language of the Dawn Rain continent. It was very obscure and had a very ancient style. It was also different from the language of Qua rhyming and the others from the Sunset Island. Xiaohua couldn't help but be surprised. Fortunately, he could understand the 2 words, fellow immortal. In particular, when he scanned the 4 people with his divine thought, he was even more stunned. He pointed at Su Zhuoyang and said in an incredulous voice, You are a Confucian cultivator?" Rumble. Just as Xiaohua was wondering, the thunder-attracting technique finally fell. The first thing it hit was naturally Master Qing Chen's splitting cauldron. The fireballs that were hundreds of feet long exploded along with the lightning. It was as powerful as a volcanic sea of fire. However, in the blink of an eye, all the fireballs were destroyed. Wizard Ching Chin's face turned red, and he spat out a small mouthful of blood. The cracked space cauldron fell into Wizard Ching Chin's hand with a wail. Buddhism sect. Seeing Master Ching Chin's clothes and the familiar Buddhist awareness, Xiao Hua's mouth was wide open and he could hardly close it. Xiao Hua's indescribable shock made him forget the layers of thunder. He only used his eyes and divine thought to look between Su Zhuoyang and Master Ching Chen. He was more greedy than looking at his first love from more than 10 years ago. Fellow immortal. Seeing that Master Ching Chen's splitting cauldron couldn't withstand Xiao Hua's thunder, Su Zhuoyang was anxious again. He knew that the Buddha fire of the splitting cauldron was similar to the thunder falling from the ninth heaven. Perhaps it wouldn't be destroyed by the thunder falling from the ninth heaven. However, Chu Muhuan's rattan staff was of the vegetation attribute. Although it wasn't afraid of heavenly thunder, the rattan staff itself was weak and might not be able to withstand heavenly thunder. If the rattan staff was destroyed, the trip to the West Sea would be much more difficult. Therefore, he had to beg for mercy. Please stop the thunder falling from the ninth heaven. Don't hurt fellow immortal Chu's imperial equipment. We will leave immediately. Su Zhuoyang spoke too much, so Xiao Hua naturally didn't understand. However, looking at Su Zhuoyang's anxiety and the four people standing together, Xiao Hua understood a little. Seeing that the thunder was about to strike, although the big tree transformed from the rattan staff wasn't afraid of heavenly thunder, under the seemingly endless thunder, its green leaves had already fallen everywhere. Green light flashed rapidly. Xiao Hua hurriedly urged his magic power to stop the thunder and shouted, "If you're not from the 4 islands abroad, where are you from? Quickly tell me, otherwise don't blame me for being impolite." Xiao Hua spoke too much, but Su Zhuoyang also didn't understand. He had the same feeling as Xiao Hua. He only felt that Xiao Hua's language was simple and unadorned, as if it was passed down from ancient times. However, if he listened carefully, it was specious and he didn't understand it at all. Fellow immortal. Su Zhuoyang smiled bitterly, cupped his fists, and bowed. We're not cultivators from the 5 islands abroad. However, after saying half a sentence, he stopped again. Xiao Hua clearly didn't understand him, so what was the point of him saying it? Fellow immortal? Xiao Hua, on the other hand, heard these 2 words clearly. His eyes turned, and he opened his mouth. Puff. A beam of Tai azure light rushed out of his mouth. It danced in the air like a thin flood dragon, and then fell into his mouth. Sword Chi. You're also from my Confucian cultivator lineage. Su Zhuoyang's eyes lit up, and he blurted out a few words passed down from the inscription armor. Good. Xiao Hua let out a sigh of relief. The Confucian cultivation method and elixir heart arts left behind by Huang Yi also had some pronunciation of the inscription armor. Although it seemed incomplete, now it was the only language that could be used to communicate. Who are you waiting for? Xiao Hua somewhat stuttered as he asked with the inscription armor. I'm Su Zhuoyang. Su Zhuoyang's mouth was bitter. He racked his brains and brought out all the inscription armor he knew, slowly telling the origins of the 4 people. What? Hearing Su Zhuoyang's end, Xiao Hua was even more confused. What hidden immortal continent? What pure land? What 1,000 demons' sacred realm? How come I've never heard of any of them? You're not cultivators from the 5 islands abroad. Then, where did you come from? Oh, which direction? When Xiao Hua finished speaking, he faintly realized something and hurriedly asked. Old brother Chu and I are Confucian cultivators, so we naturally came from the east. The hidden immortal continent is in that place. Su Zhuoyang answered in bewilderment. -11. Chapter 31:17. Buzz. All of a sudden, Xiao Hua's mind went blank. There's a hidden immortal continent in the depths of Guihe Sea? How come I've never heard of it? Moreover, wasn't this Confucian cultivator killed by the Tao sect long ago? How could he still be hiding in this bullshit hidden immortal continent? What about her? Xiao Hua pointed at Master Ching Chun, who had already taken a pill and was healing herself. Master Ching Chun is a Buddhist sect master, so she naturally came from the southern paradise. Although there are Buddhist sects in the other 3 continents, only the Buddhist sect in the southern paradise is authentic. Su Zhuoyang replied cautiously. How is this possible? Xiao Hua almost blurted out. Nonsense, he had already been to the Buddhist sect's ruins. How could there be a Buddhist sect in Guihe Sea above Xiaoyu continent? How could there be a southern paradise like Xiaoyu continent in the depths of Guihe Sea? Why is it impossible? Su Zhuoyang understood and asked puzzledly, What about that guy? Xiao Hua pointed at Master Leopard in the distance and said, Is he a beast cultivator? Beast cultivator? Su Zhuoyang finally figured out the meaning of beast cultivator in the inscription on the armor and was even more puzzled than Xiao Hua. He glanced at Master Leopard, who had an unkind expression, and said in a low voice, This Master Leopard came from the Thousand Demons sacred realm in the north. It's a continent about the same size as the hidden immortal continent in the southern paradise. It's filled with immortal beasts and immortal birds that have turned into spirits. It's different from us Confucian cultivators and Buddhist sects. This. Xiao Hua was somewhat distressed. What's all this about? It's a mess. Fellow immortal. Seeing Xiao Hua angry, Su Zhuoyang smiled and said, Fellow immortal, aren't you an overseas cultivator? Fellow immortal, where did you get your Confucian cultivator inheritance? Who said I'm an overseas cultivator? Xiao Hua rolled his eyes and said coldly, I'm a cultivator from Shi country. Speaking up to here, Xiao Hua frowned slightly. Wasn't he a loose cultivator now? It's not impossible to call him an overseas cultivator. Oh, Shi country? Su Zhuoyang was stunned. Then he suddenly realized and clapped. Fellow immortal Xiao is an overseas cultivator from Shi country. Fellow immortal, which Confucian cultivator's descendant are you? What are you talking about? Xiao Hua waved his hand and asked indifferently, Let me ask you, do you know about Dawn Rain Continent? Dawn Rain Continent? Su Zhuoyang blinked his eyes and shook his head in confusion, indicating that he had never heard of it. Where's this place? What about over there? Xiao Hua very calmly pointed at his feet, then pointed to the far west behind him and asked, Fellow immortal Xiao? Su Zhuoyang said curiously, This is the West Ocean. Further west is the depths of the Western Sea, where the origin qi is thin. No one will go any further. Hiss. Although Xiao Hua was somewhat prepared in his heart, he still sucked in a breath of cold air and couldn't help but turn his head to the west. Wang. Right at this moment, an earthen yellow mountain appeared above Xiao Hua's head, immediately trapping the area around Xiao Hua. An incomparably powerful force smashed down on Xiao Hua. Fellow immortal leopard, Su Zhuoyang said in shock. Xiao Hua suddenly turned his head, and a trace of surprise flashed through his eyes. He waved his hand. Wang. An even louder rumbling sound was heard, and the overturning sea seal rushed out of the space. Countless rays of light blossomed, and countless pearls hung down, turning into a seal even bigger than the magnificent mountain box. Fellow immortal Xiao, please be merciful. This thing still has great uses. Su Zhuoyang couldn't help but cry out miserably. Xiao Hua sneered and casually agreed. Boom. A loud sound was heard, and the earthen yellow mountain was smashed into pieces by Xiao Hua's overturning sea seal. The light disappeared into the magnificent mountain box, and Xiao Hua's overturning sea seal didn't chase after it. It turned into a small seal and fell into Xiao Hua's hand. A fierce glint flashed across Panther's spiritual master's withered, yellow eyes. However, his ugly face turned extremely yellow. He could not help but slap his hand, take out the sea beast's monster core he had obtained earlier, and swallow it in one gulp. Thank you, fellow immortal Xiao. Su Zhuoyang saw that Xiao Hua didn't take advantage of the victory to chase after him, so he hurriedly bowed and said, This Su doesn't dare to delay fellow immortal's cultivation. This Su and the others will take our leave now. Wait, Su Zhuoyang wanted to leave, but Xiao Hua didn't allow it. He said indifferently, Tell this Xiao everything about the hidden immortal continent, Western Paradise, and the Thousand Demons sacred realm. This? Su Zhuoyang smiled bitterly. He looked at the dark clouds in the sky that didn't dissipate, and said with a smile, Fellow immortal, This Su has an important matter that can't be delayed. This Su will definitely pay a visit to apologize for disturbing fellow immortal today. If fellow immortal Xiao has any problems, this Su will definitely tell you everything at that time. Oh, Xiao Hua smiled. Since you have an important matter, why did you come to disturb this Xiao? This, Su Zhuoyang was helpless. He thought for a while and said, this Su and the others have an important matter. We need someone who is proficient in formations. Oh, you saw this Xiao's formation? Xiao Hua was a bit confused. How could you see it? Fellow immortal. Xiao Hua was so curious that Su Zhuoyang couldn't resist. He smiled bitterly and said, this lowly one doesn't have enough time. Moreover, this lowly one really doesn't understand what you're saying. Xiao Hua saw that Su Zhuoyang was really anxious. Moreover, Su Zhuoyang had a very good impression of Confucian cultivators, so he didn't want to make things difficult for Su Zhuoyang. He pointed at his feet. Whoosh! A golden sword light flew out from the capital sky star formation and fell into Su Zhuoyang's hand. Go! Don't disturb this Xiao in the future. Su Zhuoyang saw this, and although he was very regretful, he was also happy. He put away the flying sword and bowed. This Su thanks fellow immortal Xiao. At this time, Master Qing Chun, Chu Mu Huan, and Leopard's spiritual master were all adjusting their breathing. When they saw Su Zhuoyang leave, they stood up and didn't dare to stay here. They slightly bowed and were about to leave together. Wait, just when the three of them were about to leave, Xiao Hua suddenly realized something and hurriedly shouted. Su Zhuoyang's heart thumped, but he still had to stop. He smiled and said, fellow immortal Xiao, is there anything else? This Xiao Hua wants to ask this. Master of the Buddhist sect. Xiao Hua pointed at Master Qing Chun and said, Benefactor Xiao, please ask. Master Qing Chun was a little puzzled. Although there was some resentment in his heart, he still put his palms together and asked. Unexpectedly, he also spoke the inscription of Confucian cultivators. Do you know about the heart destruction realm? Xiao Hua asked, not caring about Master Qing Chen's pronunciation at all. Master Qing Chun raised his eyebrows and nodded lightly. Of course I know about the heart destruction realm. The so-called heart destruction realm is the nirvana realm. When the senior monks of the Buddhist sect cultivate to the depth, they can destroy all thoughts, all qi, and even life force. In this nirvana realm, they can find the true self. It's the supreme true path to achieve the Buddha fruit. How to get out of the heart destruction realm? Xiao Hua asked again. Get out? Master Qing Chun said with a smile, naturally, it's up to fate. The longer the process of finding the true self, the harder it is to get out. The longer you stay in the heart destruction realm, the more advantageous it is for the cultivation of the Buddhist sect. It can even achieve the Buddha fruit. Xiao Hua was helpless. What Master Qing Chun said was the same as what the dead Hanju said. There was nothing to hide. How do outsiders wake it up? Xiao Hua asked finally. Outsiders? Why do outsiders have to wake it up? Master Qing Chun smiled even more. Why do ordinary senior monks have to wake it up when they can't even dream of it? Forget it. Xiao Hua waved his hand. Do you know which senior monk in the Pure Land has entered the heart destruction realm and then got out? Do you still need to ask? The first one to bear the brunt is my Buddha fruit. Master Qing Chen answered without hesitation. Before the Buddha fruit, his heart destruction realm lasted for 981,000 years. Only then did he realize his true self, get out of the 3,000 great worlds, achieve the supreme Buddha fruit, obtain the supreme golden body, and set foot in Lane Temple. Where is Lane Temple? Xiao Hua asked. Lane Temple is the holy land of the Buddhist sect. How would I know? Master Qing Chun looked pious. What? You're a Buddhist sect cultivator. You don't know? Xiao Hua was surprised. Su Zhuoyang smiled at the side. Fellow immortal Xiao, don't make things difficult for Master Qing Chen. It's true. I can assure you that even 99% of the Buddhist sect's disciples don't know the location of Lane Temple, let alone Master. Forget it, Xiao Hua sighed. However, he still didn't give up and asked, could it be that Master Qing Chen doesn't know any senior monks who have entered the heart destruction realm? If Benefactor Xiao asks others this question, it's really not easy to answer. Master Ching Chun smiled and said, "Unfortunately, I do know such an eminent monk. Although he has only been in the heart-extinguishing realm for half a year, he meets the requirements of fellow immortal. Moreover, because this senior monk has only entered the heart-destruction realm for a short time, he has never mentioned it to others." Who? Not only Xiao Hua asked, but Su Zhuoyang and the others were also curious. It's not difficult for Benefactor Xiao to know. Master Ching Chun smiled and said, "That senior monk has never seen outsiders. If fellow immortal is fated to meet him, you can follow us to the West Sea. After we finish our business, we will personally accompany Benefactor to that place." Xiao Hua sneered. He stared at Master Ching Chun and said indifferently, "Are you threatening me? Do you think I won't use the soul-searching technique?" Master Ching Chun's expression didn't change. He shook his head and said, "My Buddhist sect emphasizes karma. There are no more than 3 people who know that senior monk's heart destruction realm, and I am one of them. In this boundless West Sea, Benefactor Xiao actually met me and asked me about this matter. Benefactor Xiao, don't you think you should go with me? Moreover, I have been friends with Su Tanyue for a long time." The pronunciation of the ancient inscription was also taught by Su Tanyue. "I have always admired the awe-inspiring righteousness of Confucian cultivators. Since Benefactor Xiao is a Confucian cultivator, you naturally have righteousness. How can you use the soul-searching technique on me?" This, Xiao Hua's eyes flickered. He looked at Master Ching Chun and pondered. -11. Chapter 31:18. Su Zhuoyang and the others were overjoyed. They naturally knew what Master Ching Chun meant. They had seen Xiao Hua's magical power and knew that he would be a great help. Moreover, Xiao Hua was proficient in formations. If he could accompany them, they would be able to get the West Sea's treasure. As for Xiao Hua, before he saw the 3 of them, he would not leave Lava Island. His purpose of seclusion was to reach the nascent soul stage, or even the separating spirit stage. However, after listening to the 3's introduction, it seemed that this was no longer the Kueha Sea, but the West Sea. Moreover, there was no Xiaoyu continent, but 3 continents. In other words, Xiao Hua's archenemy was gone. He didn't know anyone here. It didn't matter where he cultivated or not left Lava Island. Moreover, he now knew that the further east he went, the more abundant the spiritual chi of heaven and earth was. Further east was the hidden immortal continent, not the depths of the Kuai-He Sea as he had imagined. Instead, behind him was the daybreak continent in his mind, but now it was the depths of the West Sea, where the spiritual chi of heaven and earth was thin. All his cognition had been changed. Besides, he had always been worried about Zhang Luer. It had been 100 years, but Zhang Luer still hadn't woken up. Although Xiao Hua would check on Zhang Luer every once in a while to see if he was alive, Xiao Hua didn't dare to delay any longer. Although Master Ching Chun said that the Buddha Lord's heart had been destroyed for 81,000 years, that was only after he had succeeded in cultivating Buddhism. Xiao Hua didn't dare to gamble with Zhang Luer's life. Now that he could leave and find an opportunity to wake him up, Xiao Hua must seize it. Xiao Hua was afraid that he couldn't wake Zhang Luer up from the state of heart destruction. Alas, there's still that damn nebula gold core. In these 10 years, there's no change in my realm. My magic power has also stopped growing, as if I've reached a bottleneck. And this bottleneck is a dead end. If I can't find a way to break out of this situation, I'm afraid I'll have to hide in this gold core stage for the rest of my life. Xiao Hua immediately thought of his own cultivation. The progress of Confucian cultivation is also very strange. I clearly cultivate according to the cultivation method, but in the end, I always can't completely enter the chi refinement stage. I don't know why I can't refine that strand of core. My own core is also just a simple outline. He could only wait for this person's core of elixir to disappear before he could truly condense it. In such a situation, I can only find the answer by asking these cultivators who practice Confucian cultivation, right? If this Xiao continues to work behind closed doors like this, I will never be able to find the answer. All right. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua clapped his hands and said, "This Xiao will go with you." However, this Xiao hopes that Venerable will inform this Xiao of the location first. Great. When Su Zhuoyang heard this, a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. He clapped his hands happily and said, "With fellow immortal Zhao's help, great things can be done." Su Swansea. Next to him, Taoist Leopard's complexion changed a bit. He glanced at everyone who was beaming with joy and reminded, "Although fellow immortal Shao can participate, we have a bit more assurance. However, with his strength, I'm afraid we have to make things clear in advance. The things that this old man wants can't be lacking in any way." Hee, fellow immortal Leopard is overthinking. When Su Zhuoyang heard Taoist Leopard's voice transmission, he couldn't help but laugh. He also transmitted his voice, that West Sea's lost treasures are innumerable. Brother Su, seeing Xiao Hua's figure disappear, Chu Muhuan also whispered, "This fellow immortal Zhao's learning is very complicated. In addition to the magical abilities of our Confucian cultivators, there are more Taoist rogue cultivators. Most of these rogue cultivators who are obsessed with Taoism are unscrupulous in their pursuit of power. If Brother Chu's doubts are normal," Su Zhuoyang said with a smile, however. In this Su's eyes, this fellow immortal Shao is upright and upright. He's not the kind of rogue cultivator that Brother Chu said. Moreover, to tell you the truth, this Su has seen a few rogue cultivators before, and they are completely different from this fellow immortal Shao. At least those rogue cultivators have such strength. I'm afraid that we can't escape unscathed. By the way, Master Qing Qian, you practice Buddhist magical abilities, especially heavenly hearing, which is very useful for identifying people. What do you think of this fellow immortal Shao? This benefactor Shao is very strange. Master Qing Chen frowned. This poor nun didn't detect any Buddhist cultivation on him, but this poor nun heard a familiar aura from him. This aura is unique to senior monks who practice Buddhist cultivation methods. Therefore, this poor nun just now invited him with confidence. As soon as Master Qing Qian said this, the other three people gasped, especially Leopard's spiritual master, who almost blurted out, "How is that possible? This overseas cultivator not only has Confucian elemental energy, but also Taoist magic power. This is already rare and commendable. Now he is also hiding Buddhist telekinesis." Leopard's spiritual master said, a few times, but he didn't know what he wanted to say. "Master Qing Chun, can you confirm?" Su Zhuoyang bit his lip and looked at Master Qing Chun with bright eyes. "This poor nun can't confirm." Master Qing Chun smiled bitterly. This poor nun first used Buddhist consciousness to probe, then used heavenly hearing, but I couldn't see his cultivation. I'm afraid he has a Buddhist treasure on him, Chu Muhuan reminded. But Master Qing Chun also bit her lip like Su Zhuoyang. This poor nun can't even detect his Confucian elemental energy. Could it be that his cultivation has surpassed the 5th level of elemental energy? Chu Muhuan was also shocked. This person is too mysterious. Leopard's spiritual master shook his head. "I think this trip is worrying." Fellow immortal Leopard can rest assured. In the end, Su Zhuoyang had to lay his cards on the table. Long before coming to the West Sea, this Su has already used the divine divination technique to divine. This trip is very auspicious. In other words, Chu Muhuan's eyes lit up, and he smiled. Although Zen Master Liao Kong didn't come, this fellow immortal Shao is the array master sent by the heavens. This is why Brother Su wanted to recruit fellow immortal Shao as soon as he saw him? That's right. Su Zhuoyang didn't show any pride on his face, but frowned and said, "This Su thought so. But you didn't expect fellow immortal Shao to be so difficult to invite." Master Qing Chun was also in a good mood, and she smiled. "He almost made us fight. Even Su Tanyue wanted to retreat at that time." Speaking of this, Master Qing Chun changed the topic and asked, "By the way, Su Tanyue, if this poor nun didn't say anything and couldn't invite fellow immortal Shao, then would Su Tanyue's divine divination technique have a flaw?" How is that possible?" Chu Muhuan laughed and said, "How can my divine divination technique have a flaw? Master's words have already been included in Brother Su's calculations." "No." Su Zhuoyang waved his hand and said, "Brother Chu, this is also where this Su has doubts." What do you mean?" Chu Muhuan was a little puzzled. He was a Confucian cultivator, so naturally, he was very attracted to the divine divination technique. Leopard's spiritual master said coldly, "The West Sea lost treasure is passed down from ancient times, and it has been lost in the West Sea for many years. I don't know how many fellow immortals have come to look for it, but this old man is not stupid enough to think that I can definitely enter it. Su Swanzi's great fortune has a problem." Chu Mu Huan naturally understood with a hint, and his heart also became alert. He glanced at the lava island where Xiao Hua disappeared and asked curiously, "Could it be that this great fortune is because of fellow immortal Xiao?" Brother Chu's thinking may be correct. Fellow immortal Leopard's thinking is also correct. Su Zhuoyang smiled bitterly. This Su's divine divination technique is only at a small level. How can it be perfect? To be able to obtain a great fortune, this Su was originally ecstatic. But then, he was puzzled. As fellow immortal Leopard said, how can this West Sea treasure hunt be a great fortune? If it was a little thrilling, this Su would also believe it. However, looking at fellow immortal Xiao now, this Su somewhat believes it. But even so, it can't be a great fortune. Yes, the four of them knew their own cultivation. So how could there be a great fortune in the West Sea treasure hunt? Needless to say, if Su Zhuoyang's divine divination technique was not wrong, then this great fortune fell on fellow immortal Xiao, an overseas itinerant cultivator whose name they didn't even know. -11. Xiao Hua looked curiously at the rainbow wand and cloud crane. He clapped his hands and took out a flying sword. He said with a smile, "This one is a rogue cultivator from overseas. How can I have any mounts? I can only fly on a sword." Fellow immortal Xiao? Su Zhuoyang saw that the quality of Xiao Hua's flying sword was extraordinary and its style was extremely simple. He was very surprised. "You're flying on a sword? Don't you need the flying sword from before?" "No need. This flying sword is enough." Xiao Hua smiled and opened his mouth. The overwhelming righteous energy in his middle dantian rushed out and landed on the flying sword. Buzz. The flying sword made a sword hum and sword radiance shot out in all directions. It slowly vibrated as if it was about to spread its wings and fly out. Wonderful. Su Zhuoyang's eyes lit up. He clapped his hands and said, This seems to be the long-lost sword technique of us Confucian cultivators, right?" "This one doesn't know." Xiao Hua flatly refused to reveal. Since Xiao Hua started practicing the core heart technique of Confucian cultivators, he no longer used the sword origin of sword cultivators. However, when Xiao Hua was practicing true qi, he discovered that the overwhelming righteous energy had the same effect as the sword origin. It could also drive flying swords. Moreover, the flying swords in his space, whether they were transformed into swords or illusory swords, under the influence of this true qi, they could be used as if they were his arms. In particular, this Confucian cultivator's true qi was the same as the sword origin. It didn't consume any meridians. Usually, it was only refined in the middle dantian. When it was used, it could be used at will and produce the same effect as magical power. Now, listening to Su Zhuoyang's words, it should be some kind of elemental force. Su Zhuoyang saw that Xiao Hua was so stingy. He asked one question after another and knew that it was not good to ask too much. They still had a few hours to travel together. Moreover, with this trip to the West Sea, they could communicate more in the future. Su Zhuoyang believed that with his own ability, it was not impossible to obtain Xiao Hua's trust. Therefore, he didn't ask too much. Immediately after, Su Zhuoyang experienced Xiao Hua's stinginess. Master Jingchen rode on the rainbow wand, Chu Muhuan rode on the cloud crane, and Master Leopard rode on the demon wind. Under Su Zhuoyang's guidance, they flew to the southwest. Su Zhuoyang rode on the sword light and accompanied Xiao Hua as they flew behind the three people. Su Zhuoyang originally wanted to ask Xiao Hua more, but Xiao Hua did not know anything and did not answer any of Su Zhuoyang's questions. This really made Su Zhuoyang scratch his ears and cheeks. He didn't know how to pry open Xiao Hua's mouth. After flying for half an hour, seeing that Su Zhuoyang was no longer interrogating, Xiao Hua opened his mouth and asked Su Zhuoyang again for the jade eyes that recorded the languages of the three continents. Su Zhuoyang naturally had this kind of jade eyes, and he wasn't stingy. He took it out from his sleeve, and gave it to Xiao Hua. However, when Xiao Hua scanned it with his divine sense, he couldn't see through it at all. He couldn't help but hesitate. He knew that Su Zhuoyang had seen through his Confucian cultivation base, but that Buddhist sect's master Qing Chun didn't see through his Buddhist cultivation base. That was because his Buddha's Sarira was now stored in his Naiwan palace, and there was a layer of innate divine restriction outside his Naiwan palace. If he didn't release his Buddhist sense or deliberately release his Buddha's Sarira, others wouldn't be able to see through his Buddhist cultivation base. Xiao Hua's experience in the Xiaoyu continent had already told him that he couldn't expose everything. He had to hide as much as he could. Looking at the relationship between Master Qing Qian and Su Zhuoyang, it seemed that on these three continents, whether it was Confucian cultivators, Buddhist cultivators, or Yao cultivators, they could all get along peacefully. However, if Xiao Hua exposed his Buddhist cultivation, would it cause any bad consequences? This was not something that Xiao Hua could know at this moment. Therefore, Xiao Hua decided to hide his Buddhist cultivation base and not release his Buddhist sense. Fellow Taoist Su, Xiao Hua said in a low voice, this jade slip. Oh, how do I check it with my jade eyes? Use my Confucian cultivation's divine sense technique, or clear eyes technique, both are possible. Su Zhuoyang was really observing Xiao Hua's flying sword. When he heard Xiao Hua's sudden question, he replied rather puzzledly, Fellow Taoist Xiao, don't tell me you don't understand? Indeed. Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. The art of elixir heart only recorded how to cultivate the elixir heart and how to refine the awe-inspiring righteousness. There really wasn't any clear eyes technique. As for divine sense technique, Xiao Hua had divine sense when he cultivated his middle dantian, but now his Naiwan palace was occupied by the Buddha's Sarira. How could he still have divine sense? This divine sense was born from the Buddha's Sarira in the past. That's right, it was my negligence. Su Zhuoyang suddenly realized, fellow Taoist, Xiao has a Taoist inheritance. Your divine sense technique conflicts with my Confucian cultivation's divine sense technique. This is troublesome. Unless fellow Taoist cultivates my Confucian eye technique, I'm afraid your jade eyes won't be able to see through it. Fellow Taoist Su, do you have this kind of cultivation technique? Xiao Hua said without any trace of politeness. I can use spirit stones or other things to exchange with fellow Taoist. Spirit stones? Su Zhuoyang was puzzled. He didn't know whether he misheard or didn't understand Xiao Hua's words. A cyan light flashed and wrapped both him and Xiao Hua. This cyan light was really effective. Yunhe gradually returned to normal and spread his wings to fly with the rainbow wand. -11. Chapter 31:20. Fellow immortal Xiao, Chu Muhuan wanted to berate Xiao Hua, but when he thought of Xiao Hua's terrifying methods, he restrained himself and smiled apologetically. May I know why fellow immortal Xiao suddenly came to this Chu's place? Seeing Chu Muhuan's slightly changed expression, Xiao Hua actually regretted his impulsiveness. He thought that this flying beast's mount was similar to a flying boat. How could he have known that his arrival would actually frighten Yunhe so much? Therefore, Xiao Hua cupped his hands without hiding anything and said, Fellow immortal Chu, it's all this Xiao's fault. This Xiao, I really didn't expect your mount to have such a big reaction. Xiao Hua's expression was very sincere without any pretense. His respect for Chu Muhuan was also very obvious. This made Chu Muhuan somewhat embarrassed, and he hurriedly returned the greeting. It's fine. It's fine. Fellow immortal Xiao has lived overseas for a long time. I'm afraid you're somewhat indifferent to some taboos. Xiao Hua scratched his head and didn't dare to say more. Chu Muhuan smiled and asked, Fellow immortal Xiao, for you to come in such a hurry, is there something urgent? There's nothing urgent. Xiao Hua said somewhat awkwardly. It's just that this Xiao doesn't understand the language of the three continents. I just obtained a jade eye from fellow immortal Su, but this jade eye can only be seen with divine sense or eye-clearing technique. Unfortunately, fellow immortal Zhao's Taoist divine sense technique conflicts with my Confucian divine sense technique. Once Xiao Hua said this, Chu Muhuan immediately understood. He looked at Su Zhuoyang, who was standing on a flying sword, and said with a smile, Moreover, fellow immortal Xiao doesn't cultivate eye-clearing technique. That's right. Xiao Hua nodded, therefore, this Xiao can't even see through this jade eye. Not only that, Chu Mu Huan said with a smile, not only this jade eye can't see through it, all the jade eyes in my hidden immortal continent, even the Buddhist archives in Western Paradise and the beast skins in Thousand Devils Sacred Realm can't see through it. That's right. Xiao Hua rubbed his hands, looking very embarrassed. Therefore, this Xiao came here to see if fellow Immortal Chu has any shallow eye clearing technique. This Xiao will give something to Immortal Chu in exchange. This. Chu Mu Huan's face showed that he was in a difficult position. He understood what Xiao Hua meant from his first sentence. It wasn't that he didn't have any eye-clearing techniques, but this eye-clearing technique was passed down in the Jing province's Chu clan. How could he casually exchange it with others? However, looking at Xiao Hua's delicate and pretty face, as well as his sincere expression and clear gaze, which was very similar to some of his juniors, he couldn't bear to refuse. If fellow Immortal Chu has any difficulties, please don't hesitate. Forget it then. A trace of regret flashed in Xiao Hua's eyes. He knew that he could not do this, so he did not want to force the other party. Fellow Taoist Xiao. Chu Mu Huan's mind raced. He raised his hand and said, please wait a moment. Oh? Xiao Hua raised an eyebrow in surprise. Chu Immortal friend. Alas, fellow Immortal Xiao doesn't know. Chu Mu Huan sighed. Speaking of divine sense, it's very common in the hidden immortal continent. Just like the Taoist spiritual sense technique, there were also some superficial records that were carved on bamboo slips. Although this Chu doesn't have it today, fellow Taoist Xiao only needs to go to the continent, and you can find it at any trading place. You can buy it with some spirit stones. However, eye-clearing techniques are passed down in my Confucian family. You can't find it at any trading place. Not necessarily, right? Xiao Hua didn't think so. He had seen a lot of such techniques on the Xiaoyu continent. As long as he had spirit stones, he might be able to find it. However, he didn't open his mouth and carefully asked, does fellow Taoist Chu have any good ideas? Of course, fellow Taoist Xiao doesn't need to consider divine sense. Chu Mu Huan was very satisfied with Xiao Hua's attitude and said with a smile, you can only start with eye-clearing techniques? Yes, this is where this Xiao is in a difficult position. Xiao Hua spread his hands and quietly looked at Chu Mu Huan. He knew that Chu Mu Huan definitely had something to say. Sure enough, Chu Mu Huan said with a smile, since this Chu can meet fellow Taoist Xiao, and fellow Taoist Xiao is from my Confucian family, this is definitely fate. This Chu wants to make friends with fellow Taoist Xiao. Thank you fellow Taoist Chu. Xiao Hua was very happy when he heard this and hurriedly said, I don't know if fellow Taoist Chu needs any magic tools or spirit herbs. Who would have thought that when Chu Mu Huan heard this, he hurriedly waved his hand and said, fellow Taoist Xiao misunderstands. This Chu doesn't lack anything right now. I don't need anything from fellow Taoist Xiao. Oh? Xiao Hua was stunned and asked curiously, then fellow Taoist Chu's meaning is? It's like this. Chu Mu Huan explained, fellow Taoist Xiao has been overseas for a long time. Now that you've returned to the hidden immortal continent, I'm afraid you don't have a place to stay. Although my Jing province's Chu clan isn't a big clan and can't be compared to the Tianji sect, it's just a slightly famous clan in Jing province. If fellow Taoist Xiao doesn't mind, why don't you come to my Chu clan as a guest? What do you think? Guests of the curtains? What does that mean? I'm afraid it's similar to an elder's position. Xiao Hua was stunned and his heart was somewhat bewildered. However, after thinking for a moment, he slightly shook his head and said, this Xiao has liked freedom since childhood, and it's precisely because of this freedom that I paid a huge price. Now, this Xiao is overseas because of this. Therefore, fellow Taoist Chu's suggestion, this Xiao can't agree. When Chu Mu Huan heard this, although there was some doubt in his eyes, it was clearly outside of his expectations. Chu Mu Huan's gaze swept over the distant Suzhuoyang. After thinking for a moment, he smiled and said, how about this, fellow Taoist Xiao? This Chu has a clear sight technique that my Chu clan's low-level disciples cultivate. It's the most basic technique. Although it's not easy to find in the hidden immortal continent, it's not considered rare in my Chu clan. If you really need it, this Chu can draw it with inscriptions. What do you think? This? When Xiao Hua heard Chu Muhuan say Chu clan and hidden immortal continent is not easy to find, he naturally understood Chu Muhuan's intentions. At this moment, he was no longer the ignorant brat from before. He understood that there was no such thing as a free spirit pill in this world. He thought for a moment and straightforwardly said, "Fellow Taoist Chu, this brat knows that this clear sight technique is very rare. It's a clan's secret technique." Fellow Taoist Xiao took this out with the intention of helping this brat. This brat is very grateful for this kind intention, but this brat can't make things difficult for fellow Taoist Chu. How about this? Since fellow Taoist Chu doesn't need anything in exchange, then if there's anything fellow Taoist Chu wants this brat to do, feel free to say it. As long as it's not too difficult, this brat will agree. And fellow Taoist Zhao's words make this Chu very happy. A gentleman doesn't eat handouts. This is how it should be. Chu Muhuan became even more happy. Since fellow Taoist Xiao is so frank, this Chu won't hide it from fellow Taoist. My Jing province's Chu clan has a difficult matter that requires assistance. Of course. Seeing Xiao Hua slightly wrinkle his brows, Chu Muhuan hurriedly said, "This matter requires a lot of assistance. My Chu clan will invite experts to participate at an appropriate time. This Chu naturally has to contribute to the clan. Fellow Taoist Zhao's cultivation is so deep. It's precisely the assistance my Chu clan needs. Of course, since fellow Taoist Xiao is helping my Chu clan will also repay you. This clear sight technique will be paid by my Chu clan in advance. How about it? Can you tell this Xiao what the matter is now?" Xiao Hua sighed in his heart and asked in a low voice. "Naturally, I can't tell fellow Taoist right now." Chu Muhuan said with a smile, however, "This Chu can guarantee. As long as fellow Taoist Xiao participates, my Chu clan will definitely repay you handsomely. Moreover, if fellow Taoist Xiao doesn't want to receive too much, then there's no need to put in too much effort. So that's how it is." When Xiao Hua heard this, he immediately understood. It seemed that Jing province's Chu clan's matter had a great impact and needed a lot of manpower. This Chu Muhuan must have invited a few powerful fellow Taoists. Perhaps he had taken a fancy to Xiao Hua's strength. If he could invite Xiao Hua, he would be able to explain it to his clan. As for whether Xiao Hua would contribute in the process, it wasn't something he could control. Even if Xiao Hua were to pass off as a fish-eyes pearl, it should be fine. "All right." Xiao Hua nodded and said, "This Xiao agrees." "Good. Fellow Taoist Xiao is straightforward. Let's make an oath." When Chu Muhuan heard this, his face lit up and he raised his palm. "Good." Xiao Hua didn't hesitate and raised his palm to Chu Muhuan's right palm. In the distance, although Su Zhuoyang didn't deliberately look over, he still paid attention. When he saw the two of them clapping their palms, he couldn't help but feel regret in his heart. He knew that Xiao Hua must have made some kind of deal with Chu Muhuan. However, he also had no other choice. After all, his thousand-eyed pupils was a secret technique within the sect. It couldn't be easily taught to non-sect disciples. Although he had a wide range of connections, he really didn't have a similar technique in his bag. Alas, what can I do? Su Zhuoyang understood that Xiao Hua's cultivation was unfathomable. Moreover, his character seemed to be extremely good. He was a person who was hard to come by. However, Su Zhuoyang's regret only lasted for a moment. He knew that the West Sea Lost Treasure had already connected Xiao Hua with him and the others. As long as he succeeded this time, he would have plenty of opportunities to contact Xiao Hua in the future. With the Fecta Sect's strength, he could definitely establish a good relationship with Xiao Hua. On the cloud crane, Chu Muhuan handed over a tiger talisman to Xiao Hua and said, "This is the command talisman of my Jing province's Chu clan. Fellow Taoist Xiao, please accept it. After 3 years. Oh, of course, if fellow Taoist Xiao doesn't have any other matters, you can follow this Chu to Jing province once the matter in the West Sea is settled. This Xiao will take the command talisman first." Xiao Hua took it with a smile. After this matter, this Xiao has an appointment with Master Jingchen. Of course, this Chu forgot about this matter. Chu Muhuan slapped his forehead. He really neglected the main reason why Xiao Hua could go to the West Sea Lost Treasure. Only after Xiao Hua took the command talisman did Chu Muhuan feel relieved. He smiled and said, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, please wait a moment." There aren't many of these chants. However, if you want to change them into armor inscriptions, it will be a bit troublesome. Thank you for your trouble, fellow Taoist Chu, Xiao Hua said with a slight smile. -11. Chapter 31:21. Immediately, Chu Muhuan sat down cross-legged and took out a bag-like object from his sleeve. He patted his hand and took out the 4 treasures of the study and even a bamboo scroll. This? Xiao Hua was stunned. Of course, he couldn't use divine sense, so Chu Muhuan had to carve inscriptions on the bamboo scroll. How else could he read it? The cloud crane flew very steadily, and Chu Muhuan's brush flew like it was flying. One by one, the inscriptions were written on the bamboo scroll, like dragons flying and phoenixes dancing, like golden hooks and silver strokes. It took Chu Muhuan less than a meal to finish writing it smoothly. Xiao Hua really prostrated himself in admiration. That kind of admiration came from the bottom of his heart. Chu, immortal friend. Xiao Hua clapped his hands and praised. Good writing skills. This Xiao is convinced. Hee, this is nothing. Chu Muhuan laughed. My Confucian path of cultivation has the 6 arts of etiquette, music, archery, imperial, calligraphy, and mathematics as the foundation. If your writing skills aren't up to standard, how can you refine essence into qi? Boom. Chu Muhuan's simple sentence immediately woke Xiao Hua up like a bolt of lightning. That's right. Xiao Hua only treated the core hard arts as a Tao sect cultivation method to cultivate. He didn't know that the core hard arts of Confucianism and Tao sect cultivation methods were fundamentally different. Xiao Hua only wanted to refine the art of core, but if he didn't cultivate the 6 basic arts, how could he truly become a Confucian cultivator? Many thanks, Chu, immortal friend. Xiao Hua bowed to Chu Muhuan with heartfelt admiration. Oh. Chu Muhuan was caught unprepared. He thought Xiao Hua was thanking him for the clear spirit eyes cultivation method, so he hastily got up and put away the 4 treasures of the study. He said, Xiao, immortal friend doesn't need to be so polite. This cultivation method is the most basic. You can only see the records in the jade eyes. It's far from seeing through illusions, seeing through fabrications, or even understanding 1,000 miles. Hee, that's right. If Xiao, immortal friend is interested in the clear spirit eyes, you can ask my Chu family's patriarch for it in the future. Hee. Xiao Hua didn't point it out. He smiled and took the bamboo scroll from Chu Muhuan's hand. He immediately sat down cross-legged and said, We'll talk about this later. This Xiao is going to study the secret technique. From now on, I'll leave everything to Dao friend Chu. Oh, okay. Xiao Hua was so excited that he actually casually called Chu Muhuan fellow Taoist. Fortunately, the 2 of them were using the inscriptions on their armor to communicate, so Chu Muhuan might not be able to understand. He just casually responded and urged the cloud crane to fly into the distance. Seeing Xiao Hua actually sit down on the cloud crane, the distant Su Zhuoyang sighed in his heart, knowing that he had already lost an excellent opportunity. The night gradually faded, and dawn was breaking in the east. The bright light behind them quickly streaked across the sky and caught up with their hurried backs. However, looking at Su Zhuoyang's slightly anxious look, it was obvious that they were already a little too late. Unfortunately, fortune did not come in pairs and misfortune did not come singly. The West Sea was filled with sea beasts. Su Zhuoyang and the others had not encountered any powerful sea beasts even after flying for half a night. It was truly a stroke of luck. Now, the 5 of them had just spotted an island that was about 10 acres in size in the distance. Before they could even get close, a cold divine sense swept over them. Hiss! Su Zhuoyang sensed the divine will and immediately knew that the sea beasts on this island had powerful cultivations. He couldn't help but gasp. Almost without thinking, he waved his hand and shouted, Let's go around this place. Don't disturb it. As he spoke, the sword light under Su Zhuoyang's feet turned, and he hurriedly tried to go around the island from another direction. Roar! A mournful roar rang out. In the center of the island, a splendor like a splash of water appeared. Then, a faint cloud appeared, and a strange-looking sea beast that was more than 20 feet tall flew into the sky on a demonic cloud, blocking Su Zhuoyang and the others' path. "This is bad," Leopard's spiritual master cried out involuntarily behind Suzhuliang. "This sea beast cultivation is probably at the 4th or even 5th level of origin power. If we get entangled with it, even if we can defeat it, it will take a lot of time. It's going to be daybreak soon." Dodge. Suzhuliang didn't say anything else. He pressed down on the sword light, turned around, and actually tried to fly away from another direction. The Rainbow Swan and Cloud Crane obviously could also sense the power of this sea beast. They cried out in unison and flapped their wings even harder, hoping that they could escape from this sea beast's obstruction. Huff! What sounded like a long moan was heard. The spiritual chi of heaven and earth within several miles of the island started to vibrate. Not only were the Rainbow Swan and Cloud Crane frightened, their bodies trembled slightly and their flight slowed down significantly. Even Su Zhuoyang and Leopard's spiritual master's bodies were faintly flickering, and their flight speed had obviously decreased. Rustle. A sound like sand was heard. The sea beast's body moved strangely in midair, flashing past afterimages. Following the vibrations of the spiritual chi of heaven and earth, it appeared in front of Su Zhuoyang like a ripple. Huff. "This road was opened by me. This island was planted by me. If you want to pass through, leave a toll." The sea beast's voice was hoarse, and it wasn't clear at all. Xiao Hua was completely focused on the bamboo scroll in his hand. When he heard this, he only raised his head to look at it for a moment, then lowered it again. The sea beast seemed to be pentagonal, but it also seemed to be humanoid. A tumor several feet in size was erected on top of its seemingly soft body, and a four-cornered hole was expanding and contracting from time to time. The sound came from that hole. As for the surroundings of the hole, there were several tentacles about the thickness of a thumb. Above the tentacles, there were small balls of black and white. These black and white balls rotated left and right, just like a human's eyes. This fellow immortal. When Su Zhuoyang saw the sea beast blocking his path and saw how ferocious the sea beast was, he knew that he was in trouble. He smiled and said, "I don't know what fellow immortal wants to leave a toll. If I have it in my pocket, I will definitely give it to fellow immortal." Huff, huff. The sea beast's entire body was trembling, and then some saliva flowed out from the hole in its body. Several of its tentacles seemed to be trembling, causing the several black and white balls to jump around. It seemed to be extremely excited. Its body, which was several feet in size, flapped slightly, and it actually pointed at Master Qing Chen. This. When Su Zhuoyang saw this, he immediately understood. This sea beast wasn't after money, but for sex. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Evil creature. Before Su Zhuoyang could speak again, Master Qing Chen shook her hand, and the space-splitting cauldron immediately flew out. She made a dharma seal and waved her hand quickly. Boom! The entire space-splitting cauldron was like a volcanic eruption. A scarlet flame rushed out from it and fiercely rushed toward the sea beast. Previously, when Master Qing Chen faced Leopard Master and Xiao Hua, she had already used the space-splitting cauldron twice. During those 2 times, she didn't make a dharma seal. Now, when she heard the sea beast's words, she immediately urged her mind power to make a dharma seal. Of course, it was because the sea beast was too powerful. On the other hand, it was obvious that Master Qing Chen was very angry. Wherever the scarlet flame passed, there was a lot of white gas. At the edge of the white gas, there were faint black strands. Obviously, the heat of the flame was extremely high. Puff! The sea beast's body moved quickly, and it suddenly waved its tentacles. A clear water light appeared out of thin air, blocking in front of the flame pillar. However, as soon as the water light touched the flame, it immediately made a sizzling sound and also turned into white gas. Kill. Seeing that Master Qing Chen had made her move, Su Zhuoyang couldn't care less. He made a dharma seal with his hand, and the flying sword under his feet rushed forward. The sword split into 4 and attacked the 4 corners of the sea beast. Immediately after, other than Xiao Hua, Leopard Master, and Chu Muhuan also took out their own dharma treasures. The rattan staff turned into a dark green rattan. It flashed brilliantly from bottom to top, like a fishing net that was about to trap the sea beast. From the mountain-containing box, a mountain-like yellow color flew out, and with a buzzing sound, it fell down like a thunderclap. Roar, the sea beast was caught off guard. The water that it spat out had just been destroyed by the fire pillar, and the fire had already burned the lower half of the sea beast. Another sizzling sound of frying was heard, and a hole several feet in size appeared in the fire. Green liquid was still dripping from the hole, and an extremely unpleasant smell was emitted from the liquid. However, as the liquid dripped out, the flame of the cracked void cauldron was gradually extinguished. However, before the flames of the space-splitting cauldron could be extinguished, Su Zhuoyang's 4 streaks of sword light flashed past like lightning. The tentacles, which were several feet long, were immediately chopped off like tofu. The smooth wounds on the tentacles were also covered with green liquid. Not only that, the rattan wrapped around the sea beast, but before it could retract, Leopard Master's mountain came crashing down. With a boom, the sea beast was pressed down from the sky and smashed deeply into the island. The ground seemed to have sunk more than 3 feet. Seeing that his flying sword had succeeded, Su Zhuoyang frowned. He was in disbelief. Before he could use his 1,000 eyes to see what was going on, another unforeseen event occurred. Swoosh, a green brilliance pierced through the dark clouds like the sun. In an instant, it pierced through the mountain formed by the magnificent mountain box. Pung! With a loud sound, the yellow congealed mountain immediately exploded into pieces. Chu Muhuan did not have time to retract his rattan in time. From the connection point on the ground, there were crisp cracking sounds as it broke inch by inch. Chu Muhuan's expression changed greatly. He hurriedly shook his hand, and the rattan broke in the middle. Those that were close to Chu Muhuan quickly retracted, and the broken part had already turned into green spots before it fell from the sky. 3 feet deep in the ground, there was a violent vibration. A glaring brilliance flashed, and Su Zhuoyang could not help but close his 1,000 eyes that he had just used. Whoosh! When Su Zhuoyang opened his eyes again, a starfish that was a few feet in size was waving its tentacles. Its entire body was flashing with green light as it pounced toward Master Qing Chen. The starfish was extremely fast, and in an instant, it was in front of Master Qing Chen. The 5 waving tentacles emitted strange water ripples that covered Master Qing Chen's entire body. On the starfish's abdomen, the holes at the 4 corners trembled slightly, as if it was laughing wretchedly. -11.